Introduction. The key to Saint Ramses being the ram ring of God, the light. Once upon a time, long ago in a land and far away, an old world legend had it that there was a sanctified ancient ram ring. Perhaps it was Mayan or Aztec. No one really knew exactly the true pre-Columbian origin of the formidable ensemble of forged gold to be the cloud of the Almighty, God. From the continent of the Americas, the Spanish conquistadors brought the treasured ring to Queen Isabella of Castile, Spain. She and King Ferdinand proclaimed it would be called the light of peace like votiveness, because of its soft glow. Although to the mystics of the day, its powers were yet to be unlocked. Even today, evil would sell its own soul to possess this relic of time. For centuries, the crowns of Castile, Leon, and popes showed a reverence and their obeisance to the faithful with a traditional kiss to this now holy ring of rings from the highest magistrate, an inevitable piece of jewelry that was certainly the most common for the princeliest of men to possess. Among the ruins and the pillage of Rome's artistic wealth during World War II, the heavy engraved ram ring fell into obscurity for decades and was believed to be lost or stolen in the bombing raids over Europe. We now know the highly prized artifact was coveted by the world's astrologers, who desired it wrongfully and would put spurs to such a gift. That Adolf Hitler, being one of history's most notorious dictators and his Nazi German party, was most eager to acquire this sacred ring of antiquity. Hitler's madness and proclamation and power grew as he thought on his dream to master the world. Allegedly, in the late 1980s, a young couple and their infant son, collectors of Christian antiquities, recovered the rare find in Spain from a very old family who lived on a country farm outside the city of Catalonia. On the return trip to Fantasma in unusual bad weather, their vintage small private twin-propeller plane was hit by a wind shear at the airport before landing, when it crashed onto the runway, with only one tiny survivor, the 3-month-old infant named Leo de Leon III. This was how and why the Ram of God, the Light, was resurrected. And later would be knighted, the untold story to hold the line. There was no Darwinism here but biblical prophecy. So the Pope of Rome had ordered as canon by the Holy Scripture. This explained the secret of Leo's infant life and why he was spared by spiritual intervention. The purpose was his destiny. Unbeknownst to anyone, except to the reader, his parents, the relic hunters, and he had perished in the fatal plane crash on that stormy night. Like a near-death experience, they all went through the tunnel of light as the three stood at the end before a magnificent, warm, brilliant, and calming sanctity of light. A middle-aged messenger angel named Mr. Galilee, dressed in a white suit, with deep blue eyes and no wings, grabbed young Leo from his parents' arms and said to them consolingly, "It's not the baby's time. I'm very sorry, there has been a grave mistake made." In veneration, he then handed the infant boy over to 6 awaiting personal guides, who also wore white suits and had no wings, as they carried young Leo's body and soul back to the plane wreckage so only he would be found alive by the fire brigade. The priceless relic ring was also recovered and went secretly into hiding within the high walls of St. Timothy of the Apostles Cathedral and Convent. The church soon became young Leo's refuge, shield, and training ground by orders of his strict but loving abuela Zima de Leon, the matriarch and benefactress of his family. Through a biblical and Roman scripture, this child's role was defined at birth. He would be groomed, polished, schooled, baptized, and christened under his zodiac sign of Aries. That symbolized the ram, and by secret order of the Roman Catholic diocese. Raised to be a leader among men, he would race to where angels fear to tread. His element was fire, and the diamond was his birthstone. In this new millennium, Don Leo de Leon was now proclaimed to be the alter ego of Saint Ramses, protector of the City of Light, Fantasma, and newest bearer of the ancient gold ring, significant and not meant to impress by its very austerity, but yet it wasn't easy to ignore the magnificent hand that wore it as pure fiction. The bright halo that adorned the saint's head was the direct result of the glorious ram ring worn on the third finger, left hand. With the symbol of goodness, charity, and faith, with its infinite powers, granted to Saint Ramses, the spiritual crusader was knighted as the Ram of God, serving God, the Light, who demanded from him as the Church's sacristan and the protector of the sacraments, the 10 Commandments and the unforgettable revelations of the kind seldom seen or heard. coming from an underground world beneath the Catholic Church's own foundation. In the struggle for inner peace, Saint Ramz fought the evils drawn to the city of Phantasma that threatened to undermine his holy calling. In the name of science, Phantasma started to look more like a theological experiment on the edge of power and prayer. All the heavenly small cherubim wept not in sorrow but in adoration, for he was hailed and glorified, the true chosen Ram of God. These winged celestials were second of the 9 orders of angels in medieval angelology. As was said, faith prevails. Saint Ramz, in a triumphal satiric adventure deeply moving and thought-provoking, is unique and universal as other individuals searching for a true spiritual understanding. Saint Ramz remains faithful and a loyal subject, unwavering, forever obedient in his heart and soul to God, the light. Knowingly, he will prevail through the present trials and tribulations of the Catholic Church and its vestry. Everyone will find in this comic book a type of read that tells a fascinating story that keeps the pages turning and guarantees to transport the reader with a hubristic appeal as the very first drama unravels. Not to be confused with Lollipop Wonderland. Madame Satan sets Saint Ramz up in what is to be more divine than a charming vintage love story of the quintessential star-crossed lovers riff ever told. In the space-age sliver of time, the spellbinding tale takes flight like a modern Gothic genre around a provocative, fiery realm of existence. This lovely to look at villainess, so to speak, materialized on Saint Ramz's city doorstep. As she moved skillfully between both worlds, his and hers, she was a master conjurer. This was no simple walk in the schoolyard or a tippy-toe through the tulips for Saint Ramz, who had been sent reeling in the story. She had spun like a beguiling memoir of an unlikely bride, with her improbable obsession that altered the course of both their worlds. Madame Satan had exhibited an infectious curiosity about Saint Ramz and gave her love to this elusive man of all men. That increased her passion and matched her narrative with a new sense of burning femininity, and indiscretion, which felt more like the hottest of reads on a book stand inside a bookstore. No, this is not the second coming but a utopian age of joy that prophesies love, hate, war, peace, and justice through this first Ram of God adventure. The trilogy begins. Story 1. Saint Ramz meets Madame Satan. The Ram of God, the Light. Chapter 1. Down to Earth. A powerful scientific community had gathered in the city of Phantasma. They were the world's leading astronomers who had traveled from the far corners of the earth, holding themselves to the highest scrutiny above disputation and refusing to answer the most probing question of all. Why the secrecy over the phenomenon occurring outside the galaxy, or were they just trying to promote their own self-interests? In annoyance, reporters seemed squarely at odds. The PR made sure the story was told, some public relations experts argued more aggressively as a manipulative tactic. They acted more like a juggernaut, intoxicated with power, with no standard for the truth, all at the public's expense. This was the newest speculation end-of-age story the Vatican could be preparing for ET disclosure. It was pending verification coming from the Vatican's astronomical telescope on Mount Graham, Arizona, where reporters were able to interview the head priest and astronomers there. That said, they had learned some intriguing information according to sources and Dr. Nemo of Phantasma. In the past, the Vatican's sole interest in astronomy was the quest to pinpoint the presence of alien intelligences and be more open about UFOs, the latest dogma that might be salvation to humanity. A boatload of government consultants and aficionados arrived on the scene to add new tension to a possible space invasion. Gaining credence over the Christians and the socio-political worldview of today, the believers and non-believers, brother against brother, entered into hostile territory, with their greatest opponents, the Pope, the bishops, and the cardinals, who stood as a wholly unified magisterium. Was there secret biblical connection behind this? The papacy in Rome stated that this wasn't just about medieval prophecy or an ancient collection of documents. Could this be a united front? Were Washington, D.C., and the Vatican City part of the New World Order conspiracy? The news media painted in broad brushstrokes the elements of things to come, and this was no second coming of Jesus of Nazareth. The scope and shape of things seemed enormous. There was no rule of faith. They disregarded the Bible and the New Testament in the most critical of times. By now, this wasn't something you could tie on a bright holiday bough and serve up on a silver platter. The news rookies were looking for some kind of answers. In the days that followed, interviews were cancelled by government officials on the face of mounting evidence, which could not continue to beat back reports highlighting the photos taken by Phantasma's most prestigious scientist, Dr. Alto Nemo, whose discovery from the observatory's telescope clearly showed the present danger of a gas-like, fiery twister in space, emerging from the depths of the universe's black hole. Phantasma's Astronomical Research Institute cited carefully the potential risks of attaching some heavenly spiritual meaning to cause more mass hysteria among the people and governments of the world. Boom! Over the course of days, the skies above were illuminated, in the distance, by meteors crashing down to Earth, sending an icy chill over Phantasma that foreshadowed the up-and-coming mayoral city election. All of Phantasma's newspapers were perplexing the event that was about to unfold to a bigger picture as destruction loomed closer across the solar system. Was this to be the final judgment of mankind? If the truth be known, the Earth's prominent soothsayers and psychics now held their moment and vision in time. They now dared to spew the predictions and warnings made by Nostradamus, the 15th-century French astrologer, whose messages now filled the world's airwaves through the multitude of spinning satellites that circled the globe. All the while, the populace huddled around their radios and big-screen TVs, as one late-night talk show host, George Norrie, tried to calm the nerves of his coast-to-coast listeners. There were no reported solar flares to explain this magnetic disruption to the cell phones and countless other computers, so stated the digital goddess, Kim Commando. It was hard-pressed to respond to the national radio audience about the down infrastructure. The weather services reported on catastrophic and geologic changes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. While Phantasma was at a complete stop, 3 prophets appeared as holy men who were inspired to utter that this was God's will. Thousands of Christians, Muslims and Jews gathered inside the basilicas, temples, and mosques of the city. Blissfully in the fortitude of the Holy Scripture, the air around Phantasma was lifted by the sound of the Gregorian chant that poured out of the Catholic Church's vast halls onto the streets below. Under a billion stars, the human species seemed to be caught up in the drama. It was like looking for a silver needle in a haystack, except the haystack was all aflame. Looking skyward on the cutting edge, Dr. Nemo chewed on the very question. Groups of Phantasma's small band of scientists were listening carefully for some message or clue, coming from the cosmos. Still, something was out there as they dared to dream, pondering the potential of their galactic counterpart. Oh, the irony! Dr. Nemo tried to hold down the information, but it was of no use. The deep dish radio telescope was picking up strange sounds like voices, space junk. None could swear by the lunar face of the facts or the sudden interest of Phantasma's pop culture with the possibility of anything that awaits them and the rest of the world. The news broadcasters tried to interview the President of the United States to a no-comment attitude as the United Nations stood by on red alert. Had everything gone to hell in a Gucci handbag? Before the struggle had forged on by the implicit, fiery falling twister, life in the city was sweet, crisp, and joyous. Everyone in Phantasma seemed to be floating around as much as a soap bubble above the mundane worries of the hustle and bustle of living. For now, time had been captured in a bottle and frozen still. In the spine-tingling chill and supernatural suspense, this adventure, which no one would soon forget, was woven like a bad spell. The Catholic Church, bound to dead silence, had its darkest secret of royal intrigue. This was privy to the highest of order, the Pope, his brethren, and his most trusted Christian circle. With information that could not be shared but held like an intimate confession, this was a memoir meant to stay in the dark bowels of the Vatican in Rome, Italy, at a great emotional risk to the Church that could end up paying a far higher price than intended. The gamble would be for their anointed mortal to outrun the known secret buried beneath the hollows of Phantasma's St. Timothy's Cathedral, from the most unlikely of alliance that would no sooner scorch the earth. The Holy Father, Adolfo, cried in his chamber over the news, for it was he and Bishop Kelly who helped raise the young orphan infant. That had been destined from the start to be the Ram of God, in accordance to the ancient Middle Eastern holiest of texts that was found in an old scroll near the Dead Sea Caves, with the sainthood in jeopardy and a test of faith by a friendly or not so sympathetic foe in the day of judgment and the brimstone brought by a tumultuous relationship that most certainly would have a tragic end for Saint Ramz's unsuspecting soul. Chapter 2. On the Mayoral Bandwagon. No News is Good News. Don Leo de Leon looked scruffy and a bit tired, like he just rolled out of bed to make the early morning press interview. Despite all his good looks, no heads turned when he walked into the lobby of the Times Tower building. The mood could be described as eerie or something out of a paranormal movie. In all reality, the whole thing turned out to be anything but a showboat, as his understated manner was all quite visible. I guess the outcome of this mayoral race means absolutely everything or nothing at all with the type of coverage it's been getting. He had tugged the morning newspaper under his left arm and dropped it on the floor. So, Leo, what are you saying? We're too wrapped up with the local news coverage that the Phantasma World Press Corps has been giving to this discovery of Dr. Nemo's. A reporter in the back of the hall shouted right up. Look, guys, and I mean gals too. It's with some trepidation that I do not debate you on the latest global peril. I'm concerned too. He was trying to find words to please them all. Hell, Leo. Afraid the big kahuna would take some offense to your verbiage? Some tabloid reporter yelled and ducked for cover in the back row. Please, folks. He waved his hands at them. I would like to remind a few of you cocky reporters not to make yourselves masters of our universe like the likes of one Dr. Alto Nemo, with his initial public offerings that could blow right up in his face, as we've seen so many Macy's parade balloons do. But, Leo, you're not suggesting this is all a grand hoax? Dear Julie. I could be really corny and say, don't diagnose me, leave it to those experts, the real ones, that is. He winked and laughed with her. Leo, that's a real twist. You play mind games with all of us now. CNN's Jordan Henry remarked coyly. No. You all are trying to search for a place in the universe, much as Dr. Nemo, looking up from his telescope, anticipating that icy thrill you get from fear. This astrophysicist would like nothing better than to unlock all the mysteries of the heavens and celestial bodies. But remember that there are secrets that must remain. Old Mary Blake from the Washington Post stated, with eyes looking over her bifocals, Mr. De Leon, you don't believe that there are intelligent life forces out there and heading our way as you speak here today? All this is just incredible, Mary Blake. I'm here today not to express words on the scope and shape of things to come but to promote our great Mayor Humphreys for re-election, as you well know. Be careful, Leo. You make it sound like Mayor Humphreys is Phantasma's patron saint and not Saint Ramz, Jordan Henry mocked. It's most unfortunate that you journalists act like Pulitzer Prize winners and awkward that you'd cost me friendships and give me dirty looks as if I've pissed some of you off. I would not be doing my job. I'm ending this press conference here and now. Looking around for the mayor, Don Leo de Leon picked up his newspaper and folded it under his arm like a holy benediction. Acting as a common man, he was no newly arrived troubled political. Expending with the theatrics, he pressed his way out through the reporters in the precise way he had articulated each word, like arrows aimed at their huge egos. In the back of the hall, a large man cried out through the crowd, "Hell's bells." Mayor Humphreys had no doubts about the voters at large, most of them anyways, who commemorated the thrill with a stop at one of the fancy merchandise counters roped into the hotel's exits and other high-traffic areas, while plenty of important people milled about the action-packed floor. At the moment, no one seemed more dominating than the mayor. Like an alpha male, he looked relaxed in his white linen suit. Unperturbed, circling the room, he happened to glance out the large glass-tinted window at his giant image on the electronic billboard, a man that could hog-tie Phantasma in all directions. Standing behind the mayor, Leo looked down across the street and had the sense that things were getting out of hand. With the media's attention on Dr. Nemo, the crowd below, walking on the boulevard, was desperate for some positive news in the wake of this visitor from space. You got to love the strange energy, Leo. Mayor Humphreys said, shaking lots of hands that reached out before him, with as many pats on the back. Leo de Leon was admitting to some surprise that they drew the power brokers of Wall Street there today amid the reporters, who acted more like thrill-seekers at a main event, celebrating not Humphreys's arrival as the candidate to beat but the phenomenon from the outer limits that was slowly making its way through the cosmos. Shrugging it off, the mayor was a master of the understatement. He spared the hauntingly simple prose as he said over this event, more powerfully affecting them all. His subdued strength was underscored. In the fever pitch, Phantasma was plagued by the scientific rumors and reports from the prestigious Dr. Nemo. That was fixed on the event like some horrific fuel that feeds leak by leak on its own fear. The headlines read that this object in space was no Hale-Bopp comet but a vortex, something far more reaching, as it moved in a hypnotic fashion, a dancing flame, which sparked Dr. Nemo to name it the Dancing Salome. She's a nightmarish metaphoric villainess, fueled by some inexplicable inner rage for whom, what, and why. Amid the zany press coverage, it was harder each day to keep running a well-organized mayoral campaign. That did not clash with the warnings of pending doomsday on the front pages of every newspaper in the city. The press was upwardly mobile, manipulative assholes lining the walls, beaming in ruthless pleasure, looking like a smiling cat with a canary's feather stuck in its jaws, using powers to belittle with their wit juiced up like almost everything else. With the irritating press releases and perceived shortcomings, the articles were crude and deceitfully twisted to sell the local stories, much as the True Confession magazine back in the day. Leo's unflinching honesty today had been a disappointment and missed opportunity. It was part of the fallout of this new battle of words. It did no good to carry a deep rage inside him like an undiagnosed brain concussion. For now, he couldn't put the mayor's past performance in touch with the city's future. So he must wait for the bullets of words to stop. But for those still in the know, the endless fundraising and campaign parties were a distraction from Phantasma's inner turmoil. That would soon turn into a burning intensity straight from the gates of hell. As the grandest city on earth now vacillated between lucidity and stark madness, still something was up. The government would not explain as young platoons of soldiers were deployed out onto the streets of Phantasma, machine gunners in black trucks that had nothing to do with any basic training, as their radios picked up faint transmitting signals. Yes, the perspective was a compelling narrative in what could be the aftermath that captured the awful complexities of a new kind of outer space World War III. This was no picture, postcard moment. It was more like a large puzzle, and the pieces would have to be put together, one by one with the rest to magically fall into place sooner than later. It was still mid-morning, and across the street at the Trump Hotel, there was a pre-breakfast campaign fundraiser meeting going on as Mayor Humphreys arrived late, and Leo soon trailed behind him. Seated at the head table and waiting was the overweight wife, Mrs. B. Humphreys, looking very showy and colorful as to be in bad taste like a gaudy trademark. The hostess there, by no other name, was one that could sweet-talk and step on manicured toes to get big money to fall out of fat leather wallets from the bulls of Wall Street. She was very well known for her charity work in the city and a grandmother to Don Leo de Leon. Abuela Zima was somewhat of an heiress to both old and new money. That came from her Spanish ancestors' bloodline and carried enormous responsibility for which she cared not, even for a gum wrapper about her nobility roots and heritage. Leo stood at the end of a long table, smelling the never-ending feast on the breakfast buffet table that lay stretched out and wanting to dig into the eggs and bacon. Checking his Rolex watch, he had plenty of time. Abuela Zima slid by a crowd of business people that had gathered around the main entrance, waiting impatiently for generous donors' checks in envelopes. She made a mental note to check them off on her cell phone list. There was a light, heady smell or scent of hair gel, perfume, and aftershave cologne, dressed in expensive designer rages, Polo, Christian Dior, and Armani. Across from Leo, Abuela Zima gave him a smile as he sneaked away. Not surprisingly, she turned and overheard a nosy woman's ostentatious remarks about her age. That bothered her more than the freeloaders there in the real-life grid of the city. Zima de Leon stilled and held her head up as she walked by her, knowing if this woman there could afford the surgery and laser treatments, she too would have had the work done. But by now, what truly mattered to her was that the little black Vera Wang dress she wore fitted well. Chapter 3. The Night Gallery. You enter the neon in the twinkling of an eye. A high-fashion black model called Booty stepped out of a limo and walked in, smirking. I live my life like an X-rated French movie star, but this is a little Freudian. I mean all these paintings on the stark white walls, she remarked, sashaying through the crowd of flashing photographers, leaving no doubt the place to flock to, and the place to be seen this evening was Phantasma's grand opening of the Macabre Art Gallery. Under its tall dome ceiling adorned by a few hundred antlers of many animal species and above the chattering and the clinking of glassware, the wealthiest patrons of the arts culture were there to dramatize the evening. This was a bittersweet time of life for Ramon, one of the freshest and most prolific artists of Phantasma, an icon, a highly successful, talented painter by today's standards. His works hung in many galleries all over the world and a respected museum collection in this city. In saner times, Ramon rebuffed all interview requests, leaving the art critics to speculate on his various works of art. Now, however, Ramon solicited the media's attention for a more therapeutic reason to help out his close friend, Ms. Kylie Parker, campaign strategist in support of the new mayoral candidate, William Brown. Mr. Slick, his slouchy silhouette, defined him well. "Hey, Andrew, is that our next mayor standing over there?" a man holding a cell phone yelled to his friend, who happened to be texting. "How can anyone compensate for the lack of breeding?" a wealthy patron said, looking above and around many heads and shoulders, perusing the collections. "I had long assumed that anyone who did not enjoy modern art was, in some sense of the word, a fat bozo, and some of this old money proves my point," the art critic Joanne Rye refrained, as a few charming characters texted in the background, and a humorous bartender laughed loudly behind them. Talking about vibes, self-vigilant Ramon had heard it all from the patrons who lunched but never eaten in a café society. Kylie grabbed hold of his sleeve. "Ramon, I so love to walk into a gallery. It's always an affair seeing all the heads floating and bobbing like loose flower petals in a pool of moving water," she remarked with a smile, as Willie Brown rattled the crystal ice cubes in his highball glass just to hear the sound. "I've got words for these news hounds," Willie Brown whispered. "I can't wait to be misquoted by these reporters with their made-up fraudulent stories. Most of them are in the Humphreys camp already. Why is it that I'm not astounded?" Ramon stated in a sassy manner. "Yes. They even devour their own mother to get the story first." Willie Brown gnashed his cap-whitened teeth. "Well, they don't pull their punches in broad daylight anymore. They work for the readership, not for we, the people, they cover. That's what they would have us believe." Willie remarked over his drink. "The practitioners call themselves out," Kylie was quick to respond. "While you're a hero, they'll kiss you right up, but when your pants are down, they'll kick your butt to the ground." Up front by doors in a golden moment, some scruffy outsider asked, "Where is the booze, sweetheart?" The woman held her nose and walked away from him as the doorman escorted him out the double doors. Two older gentlemen stood off to the side of the hall in a dark corner with an element of style. "From Scam Street, quick name, one Wall Streeter hotshot insider, who's made it like Slick Willie. And who now would like to be our next mayor of this fine city. Oh, please. He now has the best PR in the business, Ms. Fabulous, behind him, up and personal. I can see all his moves have been docketed, as the woman is now after his royal ass. Bingo, Jim Bow. You've noticed that she is a woman in sheep's skin. In my day, I've seen a scattered few of her ilk take on the walk in profane smarts, affecting the raw toughness of a tattooed biker chick. Do tell, Mel, I see it in her preppy bob, red heels, and dress. She's a highly bizarre gal." Jim's hand rubbed against his manly chin. "Say, look who just walked into the gallery." The Times columnist, Arthur Winchell, a young waiter announced to another waiter carrying a tray of drinks. Arthur Winchell, tacitly maintaining enough distance between them, and wandered over to the crowded open red bar next to the fake potted plants. "So please tell me, Arthur dear. How soon can you write a nice column on Willie?" Kylie bragged. I want it to be clear his message inside the new mayoral race. I don't want your readers to read any pig vomit or to hear some profane paraphrasing and punctuating blows. Haha. Ms. Kiwi, you'd be stunned to discover that any throwaway lines I'd write on our dearest Willie would not spark heated online discussions on late-night right-wing talk radio. But, Arthur, what is this manifestation, this hysteria over the dancing Salome or in the coming of this millennium, grabbing all the headlines? You must admit, she does have a weird radiance about her. Arthur grinned. I'm not a representative of the public's level of interest lately, but then it's an indication that something unusual is going on out there in the recess of deep space. Oh, Holy Grail! This delusional sense of the reality involved with the supernatural, the extraterrestrial, and apparently, all the insoluble mysteries that surround Phantasma lately, she added with palpable regret in her voice. Kylie Parker, I take it you do not have any childlike curiosity left in those little white bones of yours, much less your skull. Look, Arthur, I know it's almost impossible to invent a myth of such magnitude, but the public is waiting for a story that makes perfect sense in this obsession. Willie Brown is just the right avenue to take. Arthur, I won't forfeit this election. Mark my words, even if it kills me, and damn, I intend on squeezing every nickel and dime out of the campaign budget to do it. Her blue eyes caught his. Listen, Kiwi. If you are going to expose your heart to me, let's plan to meet for lunch at my favorite bar uptown tomorrow. Yes, I'd love it, Arthur. A question she welcomed. You are a darling, and it beats the grindstone, sitting behind a computer all day at campaign headquarters. Kiwi smiled in mere suspension of disbelief as she looked at him, and he looked back at her. Now that we've cleared the air a bit, I'd like a nice tall beer, but not that flat draft stuff, he said with sneering detachment. Sure thing. Ramon appeared beside Arthur. But not before you tell me what you think of my latest painting collection to date. It's right off the wall, and I see that you have a great future in painting, a master for those to copy. Arthur glanced around. Now where's my drink? You flatter me, Arthur, you son of a gun. Ramon joked. Don't forget to try the German pretzels and Russian beluga caviar. With a shot glass of Viva Rova vodka. Ramon, I'm a simple man. No sturgeon, no foie gras or seasonal truffles for me. Arthur remarked with a wink and a nod of his head as he slugged down a cold beer. Chapter 4. Wheels on Fire. OUT on the streets, most nights were for the young and bad, the fast and furious dragsters. These teenage hoodlums were goaded by danger and violent passions. In the midnight hour, working late, Arthur Winchell, in the nearby high-rise office building, glanced out the wide-tinted window and was unable to believe his two eyes. He had just witnessed St. Ramz with a burst of acceleration whiz by mainly on instinct toward a destination or carjacking down on the ground. It took the Saint a second to notice that a red Bugatti, followed by silver Aston Martin, sped through an amber light, slamming on its brakes. With a clamorous blare of loud horns in his turbulent appearance and the smell of dipstick oil in the air, the chase was on. They were speeders and drag racing along with Grand Theft Auto on their minds that played out in the intense speed. The graffiti walls told the story on this part of town, the broken glass bottles. The trashy sidewalks and alleyways made it fit for the vermin and rats. St. Ramz scoped out the choppy scene with the blaring volume of rap and hard rock radio music that filled the musty air around the manhole covers. Wild rage moved violently in fast cars plowing clouds of gas fumes that shot up into gray columns along the street gutters. Gliding down an unfamiliar street, all his attention was set on them as they sped through a red light. Up ahead, the driver of a diesel tanker truck slammed his brakes, waving the middle finger out the window, with its foghorns blaring, leaving a trail of burned black rubber across the intersection. Spinning backward, the red car was put into reverse motion, facing the oncoming traffic. That was where St. Ramz noticed the silver Aston back at the amber traffic light. The dark-tinted windows gave up nothing as both cars sat before him, waiting for the checkered flag to wave in the warm breeze on the edge of town. Heavy feet stepped the accelerator some 20 yards in front of the saint, who signaled them to stop. With his arms and hands held out, he delivered two powerful rays of light that rendered both drivers' ignitions dead. But diverting nothing away from their extreme actions, both car thieves bailed out of the hot cars and ran off incoherently into the dark of night, leaving Saint Ramz to nod his head and end their pursuit. Chapter 5. The Fiery Twister. Facing the unbelievable, time had arrived and would soon go down as the blackest moment in the history of mankind, like a spider's web holding the last bastion of life. Phantasma would soon know the fiery tide of the most wicked of all creatures to set foot on Times Square. Now from ground zero to air, the National Guard was on red alert by way of Washington, D.C., and the Pentagon brass. This was where the new tactic was born: find the invader and neutralize it. To accomplish this attack, the Army's old battlefield commander used the decision system. Joint stars, requiring continuous, accurate, real-time tactical intelligence for the widely dispersed armed forces around the city of Phantasma, showing the resolve when the outcome of any military maneuver in war games meant absolutely everything. On the face of it, seeing their fervid muscle, they were suddenly knocked to their senses. The U.S. Army and the Joint Stars ground system traced the fiery twister on radar that showed a vibration in space, a furor, and not of creation but of an unknown galactic force. Mesmerizing, the heart-pounding peril of the dancing Salome had now touched down onto Phantasma. It willfully shed the dull gravitational tug of the Earth force. Alas, something so overshadowing reality mattered least of all. It was as if time had solidified or stopped. The air itself seemed to quiver, conjuring feelings not so easy to separate the good from the evil. In the intrigue, the slur of voices, the public and military, both created the insane mood, standing before the ring of fire, called the burning zone. Within the zone of fire and looking skyward, this creature saw Phantasma's patron saint vaulting high atop a building and looking downward on the situation. She was a vision to behold and just beautiful enough for Saint Ramz to call out, "What soaring creature might you be? Greetings, people of the City of Light and the world too. As you can see, I am no mythical creature, on the contrary, and did not ride in on a magic carpet." She smiled at all those who stood frozen in amazement. "Well, you certainly are not the Aurora Borealis, to be sure," the Army General yelled out as the National Guard tried to push back the horde of swelling crowds that overflowed onto the street scene. "I see you all have discovered that much." She smirked. In the sci-fi moment, Phantasma's Times Square was the happening like a second coming. The event had induced a Super Bowl-size crowd as thousands thronged the intersection. It was staggering. Not one Hollywood premiere could have touched the rush as people appeared to be selling their souls to get front-row seats. When everything seemed relative, combing the night skies, streaming bursts of an electrical origin played about like the northern lights. "People of Phantasma, I come in peace and not to fulfill any prophecy of the Book of Revelations, but with my powers to prophesy, I can safely say, call off your military now. The choice is simple, unless you'd rather have an Armageddon to ensue upon you." Making a public display, she stood boldly alongside her royal court of fiends, flanked by a large cortege of demonic horned gladiators. From a blow horn, a man in the distance spoke out, "Mayor Humphreys here. If I may be of service to you, miss. From this Odyssey, it appears you did not come to do business at Christie's on Madison Avenue." In the hysteria, 5 burly bodyguards positioned themselves around the old mayor. "Should I be calling you lordship, since you've dared to address me as miss? But for the record, my name is Helantica Satan, and yes, I am one of the daughters of Lucifer. It is no secret why I've come down to earth, and that is to say that I am on a mission of great importance to only myself." "Surely, Madam Satan, you've let your true colors show," the mayor berated. "But we are all dying to know why you've come to planet Earth." "In due time, Big Daddy. I had celebrated the idea of world domination, but for now, I've had a change of heart. The people of Phantasma are free to go about their daily business," she stated, glancing upward. "Ahoy! There! Isn't this a flirtatious twist? with the unexpected detail that has reflected delight to my eyes. A quiet mood permeated into a puff of smoke as she vanished from the middle of Times Square. Instantaneously, military Black Hawk helicopters combed the area atop and around the tall buildings with menacing searchlights, only to witness her reappearance alongside the dashing heroic figure. Posturing and posing, they were an incongruous painting, as Saint Ramz meets Madame Satan. He was the pillar of goodness, and she, the cloak of evil and darkness over the city of Phantasma and its people. At once, he was trying to find words to please this creature from hell with all eyes watching. "I am Saint Ramz. Could I be of some service to you, madam, and your cortege? So we are on first-name basis." "Yes, you may, Ramz. You are not lounging with an illusion. Seeing me with your own hazel eyes has made you a reluctant believer this evening. Madam, should I find a thesaurus to find the words needed to describe your triumphant entry into my city of Phantasma? Ramz, you have my attention, 100%. Please don't stop," she said, feeling a warm connection between them. "No, I must stop, for I know no human being that could match your power and greatness here tonight. Ramz, why not try the personal approach this way so I won't be some grand illusion underneath your glowing halo," she said with a glint in her eyes. "No. You are not something so fictional, but I also don't believe in the tooth fairy yet. And I don't understand this attention I'm getting. If it is all the same to you, I am charmed." He felt the truth deep inside. Madame Satan sensed that in his world, things would not lead so easily to an ordinary high-maintenance relationship. "This may sound a little far-fetched to you, Ramz, but I don't believe in the Immaculate Conception. Madam, I'd be a fool to follow your lead, pure and simple. So you think you can beat Satan at her game? Don't you know a woman's sensuality has always been a reckoning for all men and beasts alike?" She smiled. "Hell. You don't think I'm going to get skewered on that question? Your indifference does not matter now, Ramz. You'll soon realize my burning desire," she vowed. "Speaking of desire, you have come on an eventful sojourn, a mission I hope you would soon end." He pressed his lips into a smile. "Speaking of hope, since you have observed the ultimate event tonight, I will keep you guessing on my departure." Saint Ramz cast his eyes down onto the street, scanning the crowds. He then smirked. "So now that you've landed, where might you be expecting to stay? Seeing how you have the entire city on its feet below us." "Dearest, Ramz. If you must know of my whereabout, try the open domed castle sitting on top of the black cliffs of Phantasma," she stated matter-of-factly. "If I recall correctly, there is no castle on the giant cliffs," he said, rebuffed in the surreal. "So, you say. But after my arrival, don't dare to disbelieve me." She tilted her head back and laughed uncontrollably in a spurned reply. "After tonight, what isn't to be believed, Madame Satan," he said, given the cold-shouldered turn-down. "Tell me something before I go, Ramz. You are romantically unattached." She clasped her hands to her hips and turned away, for he was hotter than the fire in the sun. She felt something for him fierce and hot. It was a sensation or craving a memory and feeling that would keep her coming back to him, for Saint Ramz was truly sexy as hell. "You are an obsessive female, madam, and there is no other way to say it." He grinned wisely and said no more to offend her royal being. "And I will defend those very grounds on my very heels, so try hard to accept." "What is?" "You'll find I'm most willing to negotiate with you, Saint Ramz," she said, smitten, and quickly vanished into the chill of the night breeze. Saint Ramz looked down below, snubbed by her grand exit to the crowd on Times Square. Showing no more signs of Madame Satan or her royal cortege of evil on this night of all nights, Saint Ramz felt a bit of compromise. All that was left was a light current of air having a sweet or unpleasant smell and the resistance to explore the unification of science and religion as a new battlefront. Chapter 6. The Invitations. Unbeknownst to the populace, the dying of Phantasma had started. The wildlife, the pigeons, knew something and had begun to flock away, leaving the ravens to nest in on the city. Was the almanac a clue that, it was not yet fall and that, September promised already a killing frost? Overnight, the flowers had all blackened in their beds. The bad weather had closed in as a stiff wind crossed Don Leo de Leon's estate in the late evening. Out on the terrace, squalor of angry black birds had taken up residence amid the tallest trees. In the library study, Leo looked out through the French glass doors. "Wow," he said, not expecting to see 6 white Andalusian stallions pulling a coach, racing across the lawn. Instead, he witnessed the moon shrouded with dark gray billowing clouds like smoke from some catastrophe. Soon, the shrieking, flapping black-winged birds settled into the dogwoods, and everything feels strangely still, up until a loud knock echoed from the manor's wooden double doors. Abuela Zima answered to a most unusual visitor. Stepping out from a red stretch limo, La Condesa de Dolores walked with a black panther at her side, very aware of the surroundings. On a mission and having just arrived from the south of Spain, she was a woman with the entire social amenities yet broke the rules of political correctness. She was escorted by Abuela Zima along the stone hallway into the huge study, lit only by candles and a grand fireplace. "Leo, grandson, La Condesa de Dolores is here to see you." "Thank you, Abuela," he said, looking up from a book, much like a young Yale graduate, as the big golden-eyed cat glared up at him. "Mr. De Leon, I hope I'm not a big disappointment, that is, if you were expecting Count Dracula tonight." The unexpected silence was broken by her voice and a joke of sorts as the Black Panther lay quietly beside her feet. "You make it sound evil," he jested. "But I would not pass this moment up for a lifetime of adventure, vampire or not. You truly are a man of worth." She smiled behind her handheld fan, looking impossibly elegant. "I was once the salt of the earth but dash." "Don't stop now, Condessa," Leo remarked. "You have a lovely attitude that I'd be remiss if I did not offer you something to drink, maybe a little wine. To be honest, I did not come here for my exemplary Spanish traits." Leo's eyes were deep and alive. "Reasonably, we can agree that it would be out of character for you to take such an endeavor frivolously, I mean, to have come so far." A darkened image flashed through his head at that moment. Satan's wishes. Her eyes looked down. How could I not satisfy her request, an adversarial part of life we both have come to know? Yes, as anyone would meet its enemy. "Mr. De Leon, it could be fun and games for Saint Ramz, but you and I can cringe from the notion that I must do her bidding," she mumbled. "Tangoing with Madame Satan directly isn't my drink of choice, but why don't you call me Leo?" He settled into a high-back red velvet wing chair. "Leo, I like the sound of that." "Shall I savor this moment?" she asked, holding out 3 infamous invitations to him. "Why not? The pulse of life is more intense." Leo could only smile with his charm and appeal as the big cat let out a sudden growl. "Whether one fears it or withstands it, I'd say." She winked at him. "Then best I confront it." Leo grabbed for the small gold envelopes from her well-manicured hand without hesitation. The invites were for Mayor Humphreys, for himself, and of course for Saint Ramz, the most important of all and hardest to track down, as she had been advised to go to the mansion. "Strangely, you've made for them like a leap of faith," she refrained. "And that surprises you, Condessa?" Leo jested. "I sincerely hope Saint Ramz can be as prepared for it as you have showed here tonight," she said, gazing into the crystal on his desk. "Still, power has its fate, surprisingly." "Really?" His senses heightened. "May I ask your big kitty's name?" "Forgive me, it's Jojo, but Leo, don't tell me the entrepreneurial spirit within you isn't already running rampant in your dark blue veins," she mocked. "This icy chill I'm getting gives me your pervasive point of view." "Exactly, if nothing else." She laughed. "I hope to see all of you at the masquerade ball, and don't be late. Madame Satan doesn't like to be kept waiting. It is a womanly thing, you know, if just to appease her. Some things don't change." Leo smiled, He had a kind of sexual magnetism about himself. I'm sure Joe would agree. We are of two separate spheres and without much mercy. She sighed. I understand we all have different paths to follow in life, but it's of our own making just the same, he stated, making no apology. Yes, well, it's all principles, and I feel slightly powerless to bear my emotions this way, but now I can't stop myself. You can understand foolish little me. She looked uncomfortable away from him and down at Joe. Of course, the truth is, I did notice that about you. He chewed at his lower lip, worrying that he might be missing a small detail. The eyes are the windows to the soul, that is, if you have anything left inside of you to give up. She lingered and then walked a few feet. Hola, Señor de Leon. With a wave of her black laced-gloved hand she left with her big cat. Hola, Condessa and your big black cat Joe. His voice echoed behind her. Slowly getting the picture one freeze frame at a time, he would soon be in the arms of some fiery hell as he stared into the firelight in the fireplace. The scent of burning dogwood permeated the room full of great big and small books. So my nightmare begins with the RSVP invitation, Abuela. Leo stated, holding the personalized announcements. Those are no shutterfly cards you are holding, my grandson, but a celebration ball for what evil? Abuela Zima wondered, with a hug around his broad shoulders. A creature like her is bound to go to great lengths for Saint Ramz and, I'm willing to guess, even by baptism, she said in a religious context. Ha! She can bring it on, because I'm ready for any of her aspersions that come to mind, Leo sounded disparaging in the unfavorable moment as he glared at the dancing flames. After all, he was an Aries, the first sun sign of the zodiac, and was born to be a leader. Chapter 7. The Masquerade Ball. Too many, this was to be Phantasma's social event of the season, except for the international news corps and local media, who had been snubbed by the very private affair. In the distance, a white-faced moon gleamed over the cold dark green waters of the city's pier. The last link to luxury laid an anchor a half-mile away. Madame Satan's gargantuan royal barge, the Hades, was soon enveloped by the ocean's drifting mist. On shore, the chauffeuring limos delivered the most prominent of dignitaries, public officials, and wealthy elite as traffic on the pier proceeded to unload passengers dressed in their fantasy costumes. Amid the vigorous excitement, speedboats shuttled back and forth, while the crowds waved those off as more people ascended the long steps on the dock. Many policemen were posted like sentry guards along the busy wharf as powerful laser searchlights dotted the night sky. Strangely, on this evening, it was particularly hard to move inside the spacious interior of the royal barge. With its circular tiered balconies and iron railings, many guests leaned and clung against them, watching the people below squeezing through, followed by dozens of champagne buckets. While young lovers romantically promenaded outside on the top deck and stairways, many gathered where the music could be heard. When three prancing graces passed by, one of them had nudged the good-looking Roman gladiator near the steps. From afar, his mate came and accosted him as the three prancing figures giggled and danced away, leaving his mate's reply to be muffled by the loud introduction inside the royal barge to her newest admirers. Madame Satan was a welcome sight, dressed as Winged Victory in a shimmering gown, sensuously shaped, semi-nude, a tempting experiment of erotica. On the balcony above, a ballerina cupped her hand over her mouth as her friend whispered in her ear, "Look, get a load of all the Saint Ramz wannabes." And there were many scanning the crowd below, but only one of them could answer Madame Satan's call. Then as if by chance, the real Saint Ramz crashed through the sky window like Tarzan of the Great Apes, stealing the drama of the moment. Suddenly, the curvaceous Madame Satan swayed into the limelight. Let the spectacle begin, she mused, ringing a loud gong over the enthusiastic applause. That cued the high-kicking line dance of the 7 deadly sins: avariciousness, lust, desire, envy, greed, hate, and scorn. Magically, they appeared off the right stage, like a well-choreographed Busby Berkeley number out of an old Ziegfeld Follies movie, as they danced to Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. Madame Satan's eyes sparkled and fluttered in the low light, Still, she could not fend off the overpowering image of Saint Ramses wielding wok, but harmoniously and so criminally, his sensuous glance seemed to linger over her. It was the perfume whiffing her memorable scent, a reminder of where his masculinity should reign aboard the forbidden wonder barge tonight. Her warm charm stole Saint Ramses' guard, standing alongside him. He wasn't in retreat from anyone there as he gazed straight into the eyes of Madame Satan, momentarily remembering his heart jerked, knowing too clearly Madame Satan would be highly scrupulous about what means to use to get whatever she wanted, and for some reason, her luminous gaze dwelled on him. Ramses. You're late, and I was beginning to feel very bored at my own shindig, she scolded over her waving arms. Perhaps a nice short stroll will put you in a better mood, he phrased. Perhaps you're right. I feel charmed already. She swayed. On the contrary, Saint Ramses, she was about to thrash you most publicly for arriving late. Tartu, her royal advisor, interjected himself. Ramses, shall we? She sighed and was led away into the festive crowd. Tartu's glance fell upon them intuitively. Oh, there will be brimstone for this altar boy. He broke down into a hard laugh. In the commotion, the chorus of smiling painted lips came alive with festive chatter, with Mayor Humphreys over the great silver punch bowl on the buffet table. Down below the spacious deck sounded a pleasant enough existence. Madame Satan leaned back against Saint Ramses. Thinking with a nostalgic smile, he pushed back in bold enjoyment. Saint Ramses knew she stood to ruin him and shatter the dream of Phantasma, holding the wine goblet to his lips. There was a sprinkle of orange blossoms floating about magically. The tiny flowers seemed to bloom right before his eyes. He sipped the murky brew, something extremely pleasing to the taste. A lovely peace prevailed, smoothing away his mutual cares, as he regarded the flowers with quizzical lips. Well, within her royal chambers in complete aloneness, everything was quiet, when suddenly from beyond, he became aware of a ghostly rustling but didn't question the strange enchantment. His breath felt a rich tang in the air. Madame Satan no longer was reaching blindly for the arms of an undecided lover. The potion spell had woven as he felt desire, sinking him back into the damnation from which she came. Underneath his glowing halo, Madame Satan's fingers lightly encircled his head as she laughed spontaneously. If you do this for me, Ramses, this night, you shall have immortality. That I can promise you, with no regrets on who reigns in this moment of passion, she phrased in her breathless quest. As an icy feeling ran through his body, he heard an inner voice urging him to leave at once. Out on the top deck, two men focused on their own production. Let's go find us some women, one of them said, a bit intoxicated. Hey, we don't have to go too far. His friend nodded toward a pair of twisting foxes as they quickly sauntered after them and vanished into the heavy mist that started to roll in. Suddenly, a gigantic oil tanker nearby had maneuvered off course in the heavy fog, and the ship's captain had dozed off at the wheel. A sense of imbalance awoke the captain in near-zero visibility, but he managed to distinguish the royal barge, the Hades. In the moment of panic, he stopped the engines and cut all the power to the rudder. The engines never reversed the collision path on the radar. The only warning that went out to the floating barge from the tanker blared out over the music, and then Faith stepped in as the two vessels passed each other side by side, shocking Saint Ramses to his feet. It was like the Egyptians' banshees wailing the warning of doom. At the moment of onslaught, Saint Ramses screamed out, "What in God's creation was that?" And he quickly glanced down at Madame Satan. Employing amazing extrasensory perception, he managed to pull back away from her longing grip. Momentarily distracted from the elaborate trap, Madame Satan left Saint Ramses' side, letting his erection wither away, to investigate what might dare to debunk her royal mission. In the intrigue, what was so strange wasn't so strange anymore. Inside the threshold of her chamber, a startling holier-than-thou apparition appeared before Saint Ramses. It was Mother of Mercy herself. "Saint or sinner, my son?" She hailed to him, holding out a large golden crucifix. "The millennium has come, Ramses. This evil is one that can destroy you, your faith, and dreams of Phantasma, the Holy Mother of Christ chanted in a silvery voice and vanished from the cold darkened chamber. I beseech you, Holy Mary Mother of God. Beneath the surface, Saint Ramz felt the spiritual connection and knew enough to leave at once. Luring, the night began as a grand seduction, a spectacle of breathtaking brilliance, reminiscent to Cecil B. DeMille's 1934 Cleopatra and the epic scene, aboard an Egyptian royal barge. Now, however short-lived, this night ended with an icy splash into the Atlantic Ocean as Saint Ramz jumped ship and swims toward the shoreline as he puts the madness behind him. On the deck of the Hades, high above, Madame Satan looked up at the supermoon and smirked. Well, Ramz. You may have eluded me for now, but I promise, you will not escape me, she remarked, standing before La Condesa de Dolores's big fat grin. Chapter 8. The Daily, Variety, and the Globe, etc. The next day at the William Brown campaign headquarters, with a cache of newspapers on her desk, Kyrie Parker was on the phone with columnist Arthur Winchell. Say, Arthur, what are these society columns on Saint Ramz and Madame Satan about? She seems to be grabbing all the headlines and talk radio like some royalty, Kyrie grumbled, biting on a yellow pencil. Yes, Kyrie, but I'm not surprised, it being Madame Satan. She has and will amass the juicier story lines when all the public is clamoring. Oh, pooh! Who wants to read about her lucid secrets? We all have our private sins, and Arthur, I need your help to debunk the mayor's campaign with an astounding scoop, much like a shock wave for the voters to read. She giggled softly to herself. No way, I won't help you dog the old mayor. I'm no hit man. I know, Arthur, but you're a resourceful columnist who has provocative tales to tell. Whether some can be believed, however, is another question. You just have to trust me a little. She broke into a laugh, sticking the yellow pencil through her platinum hair. What is it about now that you don't understand in your quirky head, Kyrie? I'm not suggesting a gruesome shocker, just something with a slightly different twist in your column this week besides that Satan witch's doings. Look, Kyrie, I wouldn't dream of it. You've worn my patience much too thin if you think I'm going to turn myself into a gossipy rage. Arthur hung up the phone on her ear and laughed in a grumble, kicking the small wire trash bin over. Chapter 9. Wicked Obsession. Was this a performance or theatrical event? This night's touch had an edgy and almost decadent feeling. Saint Ramz stood in his black leather suit, with shoulders as wide as a linebacker and a glowing halo that bedazzled any queen's royal crown, scanning the crime-ridden scene below, where voices seemed to echo from every corner on dangerous ground. Under the streetlight, Saint Ramz responded to the rigors in the hard edge of social realism, standing in a shimmer of wet pavement. There was stillness in the air around him like in the violence of a pulp fiction novel. In the distance, two bright white headlights appeared. There was something sinister about the blood-red stretch limo that had pulled alongside him. Instantly forced to suspend his disbelief, it was almost too much, yet Saint Ramz said, I've got to pay the devil her dues. Wait, do not tell me, you must be out on a quest to reclaim Phantasma from a den of thieves. That is, if I let you, Ramz, she replied, feeling a bit overdressed in her own black leather garb. I've heard that reflection is good for the soul, would you agree? He grins charismatically with his very white Colgate smile. Food for thought, but let's not exaggerate. The streets of Phantasma are not paved with gold and a little silver or my good intentions. So why waste our precious time here? She nodded her head, sweeping him off his feet. They then went off nightclubbing her in head-to-toe elegance high atop Phantasma's newly built trade center. Saint Ramz was warm and even shy in a way, a delightful paradox in these rare times, as they both walked inside the spacious lobby. Madame Satan witnessed the place was chock full of business executives and celebrity types, but none more famous than Saint Ramz and herself. In a state of visual overload, Saint Ramz mustered up a few stares and smoldering looks that said he masters the hearts of the city's people wherever he goes. In a flash of light, like shooting an ad campaign, a prized photographer's idea of Madame Satan's wicked beauty was to let his subject create something unforgettable, following her around the room, watching them sip on colorful cocktails and munch on extravagant finger food. Soon, Saint Ramz and Madame Satan managed to get rid of him as they wound through the labyrinth of people out on the terrace. Stuffily, they left behind the reporter to search for them under the inky night sky. Surrounded by a sea of familiar faces, Saint Ramz and Madame Satan escaped from the patrons in eager anticipation of their next stop. In a running motion, they approached the basement stairway and off to a narrow side street, which opened up to tall marble columns in a semi-secret sanctuary. Much to the sounds of the darkness that took on a life of its own, everything around them seemed erotic. With Madame Satan's subtle wooing, however hypnotically steamy, was she now prepared to promise Saint Ramz the world all over again? From profile to profile, she said, "I've heard it said that milk can do a body good, but that is an understatement. If only the crowd of the brilliant stars above us could speak, they'd say only you Saint Ramz could do my body well. There is something you should know. I am not a tie me up, tie me down type of man," he jested. "Ramz, what does one have to do to get some attention from you in this city of yours? Do you not share my sex appeal? I know you have me all wrong, Ramz. I'm not the bondage and domination type or some SM cow beside the road. You can't expect me to make a life-altering decision on the spot. Tell me, have I caught you at a bad time? Has your testosterone level not yet peaked, or should I have called the Kinsey Zoological Institute to find out what the period of stimulation is for a bull or a ram like you? What incarnation is this really all about, princess of the fiery realm? What a temperament, and Latino, my noble Christian Ramz. You have the law of nature on your side. I myself am governed by the universe, and thus, I must have a male heir in this new millennium, and in return, I shall give you the gift of eternal life. Why me of all the men in this world you have to choose from, madam? Saint Ramz and fatherhood is out of the big question. I know it sounds extraordinary, but you see, you are the only one on earth I've considered in the gene pool, and I cannot wait to get my hands dirty on your ignition switch." She glanced over him as a lioness in waiting for a nice raw meal. "Not on my watch, you won't. I am so out of here," he shouted, taking quick flight over Phantasma. His cape opened wide like a deep-sea stingray as a gust of wind blew him up and sky-high over the tall glass structures. Like a hawk in pursuit of its prey, Madame Satan flew after him on a golden pitchfork. "Ramz, be logical, be aware, and think very carefully about the physical risks you are taking by putting me off this way. Will you please go away? I'm busy trying to keep the peace over my city, and I don't have time for silly games." He reflected in a breath of an audible sigh. "Besides, nothing you can do will make Ramz fall head over heels for you and this mission of yours. Ramz, don't make it sound like a love and war epic. I will go for now, but I have little time to wait. I will find a way to make you fall hard. On that, you can hang your horns on." She parted ways over the skies of Phantasma in the sublime drama. This culminated in the majestic splendor of the city lights below them, and in the distance, the Chrysler and the mighty Empire State Building loomed in the moonlight. The air was cool and clear as Saint Ramz landed on top of a building, where he took a step back into the dark shadow of the rustic rooftop, his eyes fixed warily on the people below, where shadow-prone deals flew about the alleyways. Still, all the nut jobs and crooks walked about in the most riveting of times. In the battle of darkness and beyond, his characteristic style, humor, and magnetism served him well enough. He still could not imagine such a creature as her. This night was at an end like a theatrical teaser, and so was their spectacular but stunning third meeting, which would set the stage for confrontation from the world's most lethal of villainesses. Chapter 10. The truth can be a bitter tea. Conquering a spell over an enchanting evening, their coexistence had grown considerably more complicated. Lying on his bed, Don Leo de Leon was ticked off and slightly nauseated when he picked up the morning newspaper to read the front-page story. Picture caption was worth 1,000 words, Moonstruck, the reference to Saint Ramz being an indentured servant to the royal daughter of Lucifer. Tossing the paper aside, he said, "This reporter is the definitive mouthpiece for trash talk." He has this printed like a completely unsolicited testimonial penned by his own poison pen. Cielo, I take all this to mean that Madame Satan has fallen for the Saint Ramzes spell like most all the females in Phantasma. Abuela Zima phrased very carefully not to alarm him any further. I'd like to develop immunity to her, but it's more like a bad allergy with no defense for it, he answered, looking up from the fresh cup of coffee that he placed back on the silver breakfast tray. We are living in stranger-than-fiction times, we all should be very careful, Leo. It sounds to me like she has determination to bring her vision to life with you. Just an autumn bittersweet, I hope. This leads me to say that she is looking to Saint Ramzes for a sperm donor to further her cause, he stated with irreverent humor. No. Leo, so this is the secret mission that has brought her to Phantasma. She is willing to break God's laws and humanity. Not to mention, she is not immodest to a fault about it. On theory, she is immensely appealing but brings anti-religion implications to be reckoned with. She made the sign of the cross. God is my witness. I, as Saint Ramzes, will never be possessed by demoniacs or let alone Madame Satan, Leo vowed, falling to his hands and knees as the white bedsheets fell to the floor around him. Abuela Zima looked out the narrow window to the late morning blue sky above, feeling some hope. God and I are your witnesses. Chapter 11. Candles and Prayers. Out on the street where fantasy ran unfettered, still the devastating powers of observation remained above suspicion and, down below, laid a wreckage of a dead man on the cold dark pavement. There were no kind assassins, and from above, Saint Ramzes stood tall, his own persona barnacled with pride and immersed in his character of faith. No respite for the holy or the rat-puckish evildoers wafting in the air over the city, day in and day out, as the night pulsated over the tall rooftops of the highest buildings in Phantasma. Nuns in black habits manned their computer stations, in a high state of mind as they activated the lens of digital cameras, looking for a sign that might give them the upper hand over the criminals at large, a sisterhood order of biblical proportions in a subterranean high-tech network that existed beneath St. Timothy of the Apostles' Church Foundation. Their secret world resembled a war room, plotting strategies, like on a chessboard game. Other nuns designed splendid capes and sewed new Saint Ramzes costumes to keep him in full but colorful garb. The priest crafted his gold, silver, and bronze swords, spears, shields, leather gloves, and boots that filled the wardrobe chests flanked by masks and horn headgear. Like a burning candle keeping the faith, the nunnery hunched around a large black lacquer conference table like a regiment of the Holy Spirit. Some things were seriously out of whack. Their traditional wisdom could not stand on its head for very long. They entertained a glimpse as if to have seen the future in what was the entire buzz translated to the card-carrying NRA. Blown away, read the local newspaper headlines. Sister Martha shouted. Guns in the small hands of children are not toys by any design. Amen to that. Entirely true, but the responsibility has been left to the person who may pull the trigger, Sister Margot jested over her embroidery needlework. Well, our daily gun control protests have been caught in the crossfire. The young reporter goes on to state another Jesus seminar: logic is not faith. He waters down the simple truth. Sister Grace said with unfailing judgment. Sister, I'll pray for that young man tonight for his vain attempt to be smarter than the gospel, turning victims into criminals. Sister Jamie clasped her golden rosary tightly in the palm of her hands. Looking worn out and tired, and in no humor at 70 years old, Mother Superior yammered, Bishop Kelly rushed past the large chamber, skipping the dramatics of all the nuns there. Mother, when Leo comes in, please let him know I wish to speak with him. His Holiness' voice echoed out of the big chamber. The future had made our Leo a curious choice for this blackest of times. Yes, given this job of Saint Ramzes, he has already faced many harrowing days, and I should live long enough to help him. The Reverend Mother spoke, refocusing on simpler days of his childhood. Our precious son is now a grown man, but let us all remember that clean-cut Leo got into his scrapes, saving baby birds that had fallen out of tree nests. It all seems corny now, images of him sitting in a rowboat beside the pond and jumping into reflecting pools of rain puddles. She smiled gently in thought when, in other times, childhood innocence seemed a naive fantasy. Leo's life and times among the nuns feathered out in flashback, slowly getting each picture a freeze-frame shot at a time. Yes, it was like just yesterday. Sister Ann laughed. Young Leo was 5 and running out there to the old pond, swinging a baseball bat. She recanted, he was worried after he had just released his goldfish, Gold Dust, into the murky pond. Fearing in his afterthought that the boisterous bullfrogs would swallow Gold Dust, he was out to club all of them before Father Kelly then. Now Bishop Kelly caught up to him and stopped a massacre in the making. Yes, I too remember how Father Kelly, with his red Irish hair, and grin, had the entire convent looking for young Leo's goldfish in the stinking pond. Sister Martha filled up with emotion and was ready to cry at the drop of her needlepoint stitch. All was lost, as none of us ever saw Gold Dust again. Looking perfectly rational, Mother Superior sighed. It's not the worst thing in the world. Owning the moment, laughingly, Sister Jamie said, I've just had a memory lapse. I don't recall the tiny fish, Gold Dust, at all. Perhaps, sister, you've been hitting the cherry bottle? No. Reverend Mother, I've not had a drop in weeks, and there is nothing for me to gain by arguing or creating a drama. Sister Jamie pushed her glasses up. It is at times like these that silence is golden. Mother Superior tried to settle the inner storm she had started. Take heart. We have faith in you, Sister Jamie. Don't shy away, another nun said as all of them were concerned. You will get what you give, and I know more in return. As I recall at Sweet 16, young Leo had other fine qualities such as tolerance, fairness, patience, and was a most popular altar boy. He had a league of young girls at just about every pew in this old church. Sister Ann conjured up new memories. But young Leo never faltered one mass over Father Kelly's hawkish green eyes. Suddenly, an unbridled chuckle of humor rang out from the nuns. With love in their hearts and competitive feelings over the sentimental journey of Leo's recent past, Sister Martha said, in all fairness, I can only reminisce about the time when young Leo came back a dashing young man from the University of Notre Dame and was to be ordained Saint Ramz by orders of the Pope in Rome. In the most elaborate, secret ceremony this church has ever witnessed, he was knighted with the golden ram ring in the awe-inspiring, glorious coronation that still gives me the chills. Mother Superior looked over her horn-rimmed glasses. These are worrisome days over Phantasma. We may each feel overwhelmed or unsure about certain steps taken, but the world won't be nearly so threatening with all of us praying for Saint Ramz, our Leo. Amen, amen. Yes, we are all aware he is manning the mayor's bandwagon for re-election, Mother, and we are all ready and only too willing to help him with the slightest details, Sister Grace said and smiled with a gentler heart tethered by their faith. With that said, when will our Metro Museum curator have his first press conference? Sister Martha took heed, thinking it through. This is what has changed his plans, and all the while, I had thought he was planning a modern art exhibition to inspire new museum goers and art heads. What bad news for the pop, culture-minded. It suddenly occurred to her. Oh, sister, it's the Salvador Dali collection coming from Spain in 6 months, Sister Ann spoke up. And I was so looking forward to seeing it. Sister Judy's eyes widened with tears as she projected her thoughts. I still remember Leo's little face reflecting in the glass of water as he stuck out his tongue at it. He hunched his little shoulders embarrassedly because he had heard my laughter. The sisters all sank back in the chairs and let their gazes go wandering over the large round table. There was a faint movement of the eyes. The nuns shivered in the cold of the draft that came from the hall and left all of them stirring as they plotted their next move. There was no irreverent laughter about this matter. Leo was now in an explosive adventure, hailed as a valiant citizen not to be bought or controlled by the deepest recess of evil to set foot upon this dynamic planet. Chapter 12. Act of Deception. Silhouetted against the white moon, riding high, the witches of the world flocked to Phantasma to serve their almighty ivory-horned Satan princess. Above the howling winds over the city, one could hear the cries and laughter as they wove a tapestry of spells and cures upon the unsuspected. Who wandered past them on the city streets? There was a reeling of emotion from high atop a window inside the castle. Madame Satan looked deep into the hand-held mirror as it cracked from side to side before her very eyes. The more bad luck the better for the both of us, Ramz. A smile parted her lips. The moment suggested a bit of humor. He can be a brooding maverick with his spiritual nobility at heart. I take all this to mean, he is still an untarnished Christian. Her royal advisor, Tartu, asked brazenly. Silence, Tartu. One of these days, you will trip over your own long vile tongue, she screamed out in a very outrageous displeasure. Such hostility, madam. You have come down to earth and have stepped right into the gutter, I must say. Tartu, must I find something for you to do? She asked in a mood. Madam, can I presume we are now all going back to Hades? No, we are not. For Saint Ramz, I am ready to lick my lovely fingers. In this pulsating scenario, I will not go back until I get what we came down to earth for. She looked up with a glare. Then and only then can I walk through the gates of hell with Saint Ramz, my most handsome prize and well-endowed stud, for all my hellish sisters to envy. Well, you are being very crude about this little matter, madam. Some would say as a fishwife, and I don't care about being politically correct. You don't think Ramz is the type of ram to effortlessly fall in love with a pagan and all because it would be made easier for you, he jested. Tartu, you mean I must use some trickery? Her eyes sparkled. No, you wouldn't go there, madam. That would be beneath you. Oh, wouldn't I? Well, maybe I've been willful and stubborn but spiteful. I've just thought of a little game. She stood up with a spring in her step. But Saint Ramz might think differently of your twisted game. Yes, and it's all in the eye of the beholder. So let me enjoy this human folly with some detached amusement. She crossed her arms and smiled. What sinful trickery is your mind up to, madam? He tested her will. It's a little ploy from the very mistress of deception. Glancing down into the mystic pool of dark rippling waters, she turned and said, Come here, Tartu, and help me. She proceeded to wave her hands over the pool of wonders. Madam, I have here the book of the world with all the names of women to whom men have sold their very souls for, starting with Cleopatra, Lady Godiva, and a Hollywood love goddess named Rita Hayworth. There are many other women who have driven men wrong, as you can see the list. You've made my day, the Hollywood film business and a love goddess to boot, she phrased with lots of attitude in tow. In your wickedness, do you think Saint Ramz, in the person of Don Leo de Leon, is a romantic fatalist too? Tartu wondered out loud. I do. A rueful Madame Satan looked deep into the pool of wonders. Her eyes darkened as she glanced upon total perfection. A new life was blown onto the wax figure of the goddess, Rita Hayworth, whose image had just risen from the dark waters. From my breath, I have given life to you, Ms. Hayworth, and from the same breath, I will take it back. You can make no mistake about my wicked powers. Madame Satan stood motionless, then chanted like a post-production from Wizard's industrial light and magic show. Rita's head turned to look onto the eyes of one as evil as Madame Satan. Ms. Hayworth, say hello to Madame Satan. Tartu mocked in jest. Yes, you have great reason to fear me, but for now, I have given you free will of mind. So be very careful not to displease me, goddess. Madame added, your arrival at Phantasma's famous Trump Hotel has been all but taken care of as I speak, so go now, and don't forget my little warning. Madam, what else is going through your mischievous mind? He asked. In today's cultural climate, I see these people of Phantasma as having an urgent grip of appetites, sex, money, revenge, and maybe a little more arsenic, she said with a stirring intensity. When all is done here, it will be but a twinkle in my beloved Ramz's eyes. I will guarantee you that much, Tartu. You are uncommonly shrewd. Please fill me in on this shimming plan of yours, he said, tossing the book of the world to the floor with a bang. "Well, for starters, I think I will dabble a little in Phantasma's mayoral election," she stated in a very liberal tone, sounding much like a radicalized Democrat. "This is a hot-button issue that could spark an acrimonious battle between Saint Ramz and yourself, madam," Tartu stated like a lobbyist. "I offer no apologies or excuses, in which every issue becomes a political one. I see it as a way of gaining a stake in the future of my beloved's Phantasma," she now boasted most willingly and shamelessly about the fact. "Take care you don't burn your own bridges when playing with these acts of deception," he warned, not taken in by her plan. "Money means power in Phantasma, and there is a Benedict Arnold in the old mayor's organization, and I think some greenbacks would loosen up his bitter tongue," she envisioned. "Yes, one Wessel Malone will make it possible for me to enter the political arena of the Commonwealth of the City of Phantasma," she said, caressing her black skunk-like cat, Helton, to her breast. "You really have fallen for this, Aries," he mocked her. "He is no ordinary zodiac ram. Now go and bring me today's horoscope," she said, stargazing up at the constellation with Leo leaping proudly across the sky all night. Chapter 13. The Felonious Decoy. It was midday, and the rush-hour traffic was from bumper to bumper. "Who is the gorgeous creature?" shouted the tall doorman from the sidewalk to the stuffy limo driver. Meanwhile, from where Don Leo de Leon sat, inside the busy lobby of the newly refurbished Trump Grand Hotel, he pointed his artfully stabled chin in the direction of a goddess drifting past him, followed by a bright, red regiment of bellhops toting a score of trucks and luggage. Speechless with infatuation, the desk clerk held out a passkey card to the luxury suite as the fictitious Rita Hayworth signed the register. It was more than sunshine that had come through the lobby window that lured Don Leo de Leon and others there to turn heads. "She's beautiful," he thought. She looked like a celebrity or some cover girl and moved like a high-fashion model waiting for the camera lens to click. It was her attitude he found that hit him. Whap! Suddenly, she turned around and looked at a man standing beside her. "Max, you're late. I've just checked in and all by myself. You had me worried and wondering what had become of my most trusted agent and PR man in the business." In the ploy, they both moved into the hotel elevator. There she went, swinging her hips, walking in bone-white heels in easy locomotion. Leo had just sized up the passing clutch of male and female, in their slim-hipped suits, and liquid skirts that paused ever so briefly. He too felt the weird urge to bellow bravo, and laughed. Things were precisely and absolutely fine inside Trump's Grand Hotel today. Chapter 14. She's flack from hell. In an abandoned warehouse, Wessel Malone spat tobacco out on a dusty floor, looking out the high-rise window, sharing what he knew, as Madame Satan wrote him out a very nice fat check for a cool $1 million, drawn against Phantasma's largest bank, the Banco Manhattan Trust. This did not bother her, but what was eating at her was Malone's newfound desire to tell all. This might cause a few sparks to come from the Humphreys camp likened to Leo de Leon's protests, lawsuits, and a public relations effort to portray Wessel Malone as an evil incarnate, a notorious criminal type. Over the anguish of a bright, honest young man, Mr. de Leon, in a world full of pettiness and greed, that had become a one-man's fight. On this day, torpedoed by malice and innuendos like some vendetta, Wessel Malone stood by his assertions and the shadowy figure that paid him well. "Remember this moment," Madame Satan said. "It will not come again, I can guarantee you that much." Wessel Malone nodded solemnly. "That's just what I was thinking, but I believe I was long overdue." "Hush, hush, this mayhem will be our little secret for now." She smiled. "I didn't know such a bond could exist between us and wouldn't have known how deep it might go." Malone gazed into her eyes. "I hope Saint Ramsey does not take offense to my confession. I know one thing, and this is the truth. I'm destined for Saint Ramsey because I'm not one prone to young girly-type crushes. Am I being too psychological or obsessive? Well, maybe," she recalled wistfully. "It isn't just an infatuation, Madame Satan. I can tell Saint Ramsey has set your Heart aflame as we speak, but if I may say so, how very de-virginizing for you. Malone shook his head. I had no idea of your true passion for the saint, as you are like the other woman of Phantasma he's following. In short order, there will not be any other woman in Phantasma for Saint Ramz, or they'll find themselves answering to a bed of molten hot coals. She laughed. You are a peculiar little man, Wessel Malone. She felt a bit dirty, but now Malone's eminently respectable too, the scandalous circumstance under which he accumulated this new money somehow forgotten in the past few minutes through this unholy alliance they seemed to have framed. My gut instinct is that Saint Ramz will not be a piece of cake. They say he has the voices of little angels that speak to him. Besides, he may not be interested on a trip to the black hole if he chooses to live the blessed life. I'm no wasteful indulgent. The simple matter is, I can resolve and act with a woman's instinct. Sooner or later, this finely chiseled ram and I will share a bed together. You do not know the order and manner of things in my realm. Ramz will quickly grow to enjoy my attention and trust in my abilities as his only sexual partner. When it comes to locking horns with the ram, Madam Satan, you lack no inhibitions. He was careful not to be too presumptuous. Well, you might be right. I wouldn't have him think of me as a street harlot. They laughed spontaneously, but he felt uncomfortable as she retreated behind her own mask of indifference and vanished into the warehouse darkness before his eyes. The poor Ram of God, he must fight the enemy in this fiery field and the enemy within himself. Wessel Malone smiled. He is a man not to be envied. Malone now felt she would soon draw the saint down the dark road. It was a race against time, like an act of terrorism. This would be her story of triumph and commitment if only Saint Ramz would take the blazing trail. Knowing in the fine nuance exceptionally well versed, her strong character exuded a jet-age heart-rendering glamour in the rustic city of light in the 21st century. Her very words, like stargazing love and ever after, illustrated to him a combustible nature of mixing religion and the unspeakable dark antics. This was in the workings of the she-devil that he now would be serving. Chapter 15. Scandal in the Wind. The very next day, Don Leo de Leon looked affable enough as his face fell into complete repose. He took on the menace as he caught wind of a fellow defector from the Gossiper, Lester Smith, who dished a bit of sleaze about the corporate fat cats, unreasonable but bluntly incensed with them. He recounted, Wessel Malone, the unlikely character in a grey flannel suit. I don't fib. Malone leaked to the Phantasma press corps the exciting news that his ex-boss, Mayor Humphreys, was forging ahead with a package of tax cuts for Phantasma's corporate welfare. No thanks to Malone, Lester would put his own spin on it as he wrote, here's Humphreys, willing to be tough, willing to take on the Phantasma constituency to get to a balanced budget. Ha ha ha. Lester Smith teed on the big story, which ran on the cover page of the Post and other local news media outlets. Mayor Humphreys' headquarters unveiled the actual package of cuts several days later. The public now felt bamboozled with this hodgepodge of provisions that turned out mostly to favor the biggest corporations and the wealthy elite vital stats. The strategy worked from the beginning that it was packaged then peddled. Knee deep in snakes, Don Leo de Leon spent the next 2 weeks scrambling and backtracking, trying to distance him from the local newspaper stories. That turned out to be essentially all but a sham to derail the mayor's bandwagon. Mayor Humphreys, don't be an old sourpuss, calling up the Wall Street editors to scream at them, and for what? Kywee Parker said at a press conference. This is not exactly the way to make friends in Phantasma and influence the voters. You are harassing the news press for daring to deviate from the message of the day. Don't treat the press like young morons, she stated with soporific sound bites. Meanwhile, she could not be happier for the defection of Wessel Malone and the gushing headlines that left the Humphreys camp unavailable for further comments. In the weeks of outrage, Don Leo de Leon realized he had to make the fight more personal. He needed to rally the public against these evil individuals, not some faceless corporation. It was about making waves, the hype, and getting there was the hardest part, taking their banners to the streets. Amazingly, their stunt worked, as in Willie's office, they too were under the impression that their headquarters was a major corporation to be reckoned and made use of. William Brown threw out his fists to the air. "I love what I do, and I do what I say," the Phantasma native shouted. "That's the trouble with Mayor Humphreys. He is pure showbiz to the people and voters of this city." Willie's staff could hardly believe his good fortune, young, tan, and never at a loss for a good sound bite. "I love working with the news media because the best spin is the best substance. I want all their questions to be answered accurately and in a timely fashion. That is what the working class expects." According to news reports, Madame Satan, for her part, said she is just happy to help the underdog in whatever way. Unfortunately, someone close to the opposite seemed to be the case for Willie Brown. Far from charming the news media out of their shoes was Ms. Kyrie Parker, who had been reported to be driving them up the wall with her newfound religion and hewing conscientiously of the 10 Commandments, the Golden Rule, and moral values. "This is not my thinking," sexist Willie Brown said publicly off the record. "The bitch has become a problem for me. She could be overworked, plain and simple in this ultra-conservative election for mayor. Kylie has allowed herself to have a high profile in an institution where there are two classes of people, the haves and the have-nots." Like a Christmas bonus, Madame Satan appeared beside Willie Brown, sensing a soul connection. "You are not to worry, Mr. William Brown. I have just arrived. I'm here to advise you that Ms. Kylie Parker will no longer be your campaign spokeswoman. She planned. I will be the improbable vessel for your vaulting aspirations for mayor of this fair city. You have twisted my arm. I'm listening, madam." He bowed to her. "You're most fortunate. Someone close, and I mean close, to the Humphreys camp didn't want to be a player, and what we have left is that incredible mismatch of Mayor Humphreys and Mr. De Leon, with a sleuthing talent," she blared out in retrospect. "Yes, you know if they look too good to be true, they probably are," he mimicked like a bad comic. "I like your jargon, Willie boy." Madam knew she had him on the hook, like Sherlock Holmes searching for the truth that would take a shocking turn for the worst, if her plan failed. He was unaware he had stumbled over a deadly conspiracy as they shook hands to seal the deal. Things could only get complicated in the manly arts. When compared to free streaming porn, her name connoted firepower. Like an old Harvard man, he sang, "Bola, Bola." Instantly, a horde of camera flashes went off in the evening air, in the landscape of rich and powerful men, with an overflow of women made up like models gathered around him. This was a lifestyle and laissez-faire testament. Too much money and he was still a butthole, not a noteworthy man of character. But on this day, William Brown's spirit soared like the tickler tossing the political bouquet of roses at his feet. With nothing but admiration for his aggressiveness with his charisma, powerful people gravitated toward him, accepting a hearty slap on the back like a golden opportunity for one so fresh from the chute. Yet he was close enough to singe eyebrows, whispering into his ear and drinking scotch and water to loosen moods, causing the symptoms to accelerate and uplift the self-esteem of a new campaign waiting in the wings. The enormously entertaining event ushered in a slightly different approach by the brightest in the press industry. There was no need to worry about a tragic reminder. Power could change and destroy a write-up that would be amicably teasing. Madame Satan was media material. She cried real tears and felt real pain, both physical and emotional, and exuded a grace and poise hard to resist. She now single-handedly decided the political future of the young candidate who hardly contained his newfound glee. There was a slimy antagonism toward the media's irresponsible jerks not taking him to its bosom sooner, but for now, he was not willing to rock the boat. Chapter 16. The Sleazing of Phantasma. The next morning, inside campaign headquarters, Kylie Parker walked in front of Willie. "You won't believe this, Christ. But I'm hearing Twitter talk all over, Facebook, and the internet that you're in like Flint with Madame Satan. You bastard, Willie. I can't believe you've pulled this one off without me." She laughed, clutching both her hands. "What do you want me to say? She ran into me late yesterday and offered her services. I very well could not say no to the most powerful woman on the planet. Shut up, Willie. There is something wrong here. Your crystal blue eyes can be very revealing. She stood back a few feet from him in amazement. Maybe it's the morning light filtering through the window, Kaiwi. Willie looked away from her suspicious eyes. No, I'm not having an illusion. Remember, I know how your mind works. She sighed, nodding her head in disbelief. Well, go ahead and play with your silly words to your heart's content. I'm busy, so you will excuse me. He scoffed at her and sipped from his coffee cup, opening emails in the laptop. Now you're being transparent. It's all her doing, isn't it, Willie? All right, but don't be a bitch about it. I think it's time we winded up this partnership. Nothing lasts forever, Kaiwi, he said ever so smugly. I should be stunned. She held back the tears and her emotions. Kaiwi, we've gone about as far as we can go together. He smiled. Why not just end this on a good note and remain best of friends? He put his hand out to her as she turned away from him. Thanks, but no thanks. Don't care to reap the rewards, and to be more honest, I don't like the way you've been playing it so freaking cool with me. Now that you're with the new media darling and shit, you think Madam Satan can win you this election, she replied, scolding. You're crazy, Kaiwi, and all because I've never gotten into your panties, this is why you feel I've jilted you. I get the picture, he said, controlling. You're a moron. Kaiwi exploded. I made you, the image, and the career, Willie. They're all mine, and you know it. You're the biggest fool, Kaiwi. This act of yours is so bogus. I did not think you were the type to play the jaded old seamstress. Well, not anymore, Willie darling. Maybe now I can join a knitting club. Careful, the campaign doesn't go down in flames, Kaiwi said, more opposed to the dagger of his words that had the effects of a seizure in her brain. Wishful thinking, but I now have all the phantasma photojournalists fallen over one and other in their zeal to cover my candidacy. Yes, you have made a pact with the she-devil and her ambitious schemes. Just don't forget to thank the Ram of Phantasma. He is the only reason or, should I say, the tighty-whitties she liked to get into. Kaiwi, you're living in a time when well enough should be left alone. Well, if you'll leave me be. I can pack up my things and go. I don't wish to be caught in the crosshairs. Kaiwi felt betrayed by the only man she ever loved. Suffering, her heart was forged in steel. Your grapes are so sour. I can smell them from here. Just leave your office keys on my desk and close the open window. It's gotten a bit drafty in here. He smirked and turned away like a newly contrived political issue. You're so tactful. Kaiwi looked out the big open window to the street view of downtown. This is like a carnival sideshow catering to the dark side of man. I've become a freak in an amusement park, some hoochie-coochie to laugh at. Well, go ahead, Willie. Get your voyeuristic thrill, because I'm laughing too. Bye, Willie, see you in hell. Kaiwi Parker climbed outside the window onto the ledge and jumped to her death, a woman scorned. Shaken, not trusting his eyes, Willie Brown stood up from his desk and cried out, "You stupid little fool, you're weak, and a coward life is tough for the defenseless ones." Suddenly, the sleazing of Phantasma began down on the street as the daily traffic came to an abrupt stop. The loud sounds of pedestrian screams were heard along the sidewalk. In the disarray, a hot dog vendor shouted, "It's Kaiwi Parker, the campaign coordinator for Willie Brown, the new mayoral candidate." In the jumble of people, the beat cop raced up the building steps and covered the body with his long black coat. The street reporters smelling a story tried to take pictures of the bloody scene, where the dead woman lay broken and alone. From the distance, an ambulance siren filled the air. The police commissioner's squad car pulled up alongside the growing crowd. Commissioner Stark slipped out of the unmarked police car. He was followed by Lieutenant Jeffries. "I guess Willie will be glad to see the both of you cops," a reporter joked. "You doubt that, the commissioner jested back. Not. The lieutenant winked. This Brown guy is as smooth a dresser as his street brogue. I've always had a horror of this white Anglo-Saxon Protestant-looking circa 1930s. He plots his next moves on City Hall, but after this little business, time will tell. I'm with you on this one, Commissioner. Jeffries said, laughingly. Wait outside, boys. Stark said to the photojournalist, walking into Brown's high-rise headquarters. The elevator doors closed behind both cops. In the damage control, the press quoted the imminent Madame Satan, I have nerve or the arrogance not to make myself available for an insufferable comment on unsubstantiated charge leveled against Mr. W before the investigation is completed. I know how to play the game and know full well how much that irritates his rivals, and if better said, it would turn this unpleasantness of circumstances into a Salem witch trial. Chapter 17. The Cover-Up. In the cover-up for the month of September, walking into City Hall, Don Leo de Leon was in a serious connotation and looking his sharpest in a classical navy blue suit. This is a sordid mess to allow the public to experience the vicarious thrill of the tawdry by crying frame up to all the voters at large. Leo said, slamming the morning newspaper on the mayor's desk. Have you read today's headlines? Can you believe Willie thinks he has a chance at getting your office seat now, Mayor? I'm not surprised by this, Leo. With that treacherous serpent from hell directing his campaign as chairwoman and doing damage control before shit hits the fan and all the mud dries. For now, this Lady Satan has the upper hand on us, not letting Willie talk to the press, just releasing a blank denial to them. But I can feel it in my bones that Willie had somehow pushed Kiwi out the window, and only heaven knows what he will do for the third act. Leo dared to think him a man so evil. Leo, my boy, I can't wait for the press to go bananas if that is truly the case. The news media will descend on them, in the hope of finding some small slip of information to hang him out to dry. Hell, Mayor, the Daily World has sold us out there standing by Willie, the man, innocent until proven guilty, dead body or not. It's the early bird placebo to keep the rest of the news beast at bay. Yes, following Madame Satan's statement that Kiwi Parker had been loose cannon from the start. The stress finally got to her when she freaked out, thinking she could fly like the birdies, Leo joked. The Lord has mercy, I don't know how all this will play out in Phantasma, but I'm still counting on Saint Ramz. He's the one man who can save Phantasma and possibly the rest of the world, the mayor concluded. Chapter 18. Love in the Air. Mid-afternoon with unconventional attitudes, members in grey suits walked into the men's Royal St. George Yacht Club. Judge Franklin is looking robust in his pinstriped suits, not a fuddy-duddy but a clothes horse. The black dotted bow tie gave him instant old-world credentials. Genetically predisposed, he was fooling around, whistling an old Oxbridge song with his pipe in hand. When walking in, outfitted like the Prince of Wales, burning the days in today's media meltdown, Don Leo de Leon was kind of frustrated the way things were going. Looking across from his armchair, the judge was light-hearted and self-promoting. Leo. Why the downtrodden look? Where's that infectious spirit of yours? Hello, Judge Franklin, I don't know if we're to be spit on for doing things right. It doesn't seem to stick in the public's craw with all the senseless, sloppy drool. Blame the press. These days, all their interest is only in superficial gossip and trivial matters. The judge puffed on his smelly big Cuban cigar. Yes, while Mayor Humphreys is suffering word brutalities at the hands of this inbred William Brown, the shallowest man on Wall Street, Leo replied. But, my boy, I can tell you, Willie is a financial wizard. There is no one on Wall Street more respected or frenetic in his entertaining profile. Some would say he has good karma. The judge waved his cigar and drink. But, Your Honor, I know the man. As I've said many times, there are more heroes and villains in this mayoral race. Even the press echelon knows what goes on in the huddles unlike anyone else, but they won't react. I too am sorry, Leo. I cannot help you peel the curtain and show what really goes on. The judge turned away with his favorite drink in hand. Finding no requiem in sight, Leo de Leon walked out of the private men's club, bumping into another man on the street. It was noon hour, and the tall buildings began to obstruct the warm sunlight, which quickly lost to the encroaching shade. Beneath Leo's stylish sheen and bristles was the same ambition and snarl that delivered him as Saint Ramz from this loony ordeal of Satan's to control this election. There were promising signs that everything comes in good time, not finding anything but the solace he was seeking from the ambivalence of Madame Satan when, suddenly, in the worst of times, Leo de Leon met up with the world's most alluring female and the most popular pin-up of the four branches of the armed forces, Ms. Rita Hayworth on Finance Avenue. Toujours l'amour toujours. With both her dark brown eyes set on his heart and soul, he thought himself to have found the right G-girl from the passion that had always eluded him, never wondering that she was the wicked creation of one Madame Satan. In the marvel of deception and talent to amuse, Leo mulled over what little he did know about the famous Hollywood screen legend. It came to this that she was a Spaniard like himself and American as pie, crowned queen of the Columbia musicals, with a most fetching walk, sporting a tiny gold cross around her neck like most good Christian girls. Hola, caballero. With her flirtatious Spanish lingo, Rita noticed his scanning eyes through her dark glasses as she removed them. Having just bumped into her like an RKO romantic comedy, he played directly to her. I cannot say I'm sorry for having fallen all over you when you've managed to quench a quixotic thirst inside of me, he said, with eyes slumming all over her. You're poetic as a keen journalist that constructs prose, said Rita, caught in the trap and could not back out now. So please tell me, how does the reality of real life match up to the fantasy I project on the silver screen? I'm speechless just looking at you. I can see why you're just the biggest movie star in the world. He laughed nervously in the wink of her eye. His face broadened into a grin, drawing inspiration from the seductive line in the flirtatious banter. Why, you're so much fun. Flattery will get you anything they say. You are Mr. de Leon, S.I., curator of the largest museum in the world, or so I've read in the newspapers, she voiced. I see your campaign is also in a tailspin. Ms. Hayworth, it's a nightmare I never imagined I'd be a part of. By my very own nature, I am a most private of men. Rise to believe that if you have problems, you deal with them yourself. The very last thing would be to talk about them publicly. He confessed, yes. Ms. Hayworth, the times have taken on a terrifying turn in this mayoral campaign. Now if only you could consider throwing your support the Humphreys way, it would help me in the ordeal. This is a most difficult thing I'd ever ask of you. He grinned convincingly. Mr. de Leon, you know I'd be breaking an old Hollywood taboo. Please call me Leo. I know it's not the time for reticence. Leo, please address me as Rita, and you may count me in as a kindred spirit who has just arrived. Wow. Pinch me, Rita. You joining up with the mayor's bandwagon has made my day. Leo got all emotional and gave her a great big hug. I hope I can fascinate the voters long enough to change the bad wind of Phantasma. She made light of herself. I choose to avoid thinking about that these days, but where is my strong faith in myself, God, life, and yes, Phantasma? He shook his head. Leo, with your good character and my charm, I don't see how you and Humphreys can lose this big mayoral re-election now. Rita, you have made me a new believer once again, and the cliché phrase, only in Hollywood, works for me. Leo shouted as they both broke into laughter while the passers-by looked on from the busy street. Chapter 19. Reinventing the Wheel. Lulling the citizenry and the big money boys, Leo de Leon knew he had found a way to give Mayor Humphreys an instant makeover to re-emphasize his image by arranging a string of fundraisers. Sitting down with the trust of Bonco Corporation and Rita Hayworth, they all looked at the latest polls and began to figure out the chess match that would have to be followed before the next voters' poll. We are embarrassingly out of whack, Leo de Leon stated with a long gaze at Rita, finding something unmistakably majestic about her smile. I'm sure we can all agree to that, but the only thing at stake is not our reputations but our future careers, one of the trustees remarked. Leo, and everybody here, I have an idea. Rita said, looking like a scheming minx. Why don't you take care of the influential journalists and me the publicity gimmicks? We can turn this fundraiser into a big money deal. That's great, Rita. We will have all the spin doctors reeling, Leo agreed. And you can start us off tonight. That evening, inside the VIP ballroom of the Trump Grand Hotel, Ms. Hayworth, incredibly radiant under the spotlight, dressed in pink. Ascending a white marble staircase, she looked as if she had been sent by Central Casting to win over all the local news media and hounds that dogged the campaign. Working her magic, she performed a Latin dance and a song entitled, Amato Mio, while she mesmerized the audience, in hopes of garnishing some support for the mayor and Leo's heart. To all her critics, stepping down from the swankiest showcase, Rita on-screen, as well as off-screen, revealed a distinctive flair. While young studs turned their heads and roving eyes, the photojournalists snapped their Polaroids in a frenzy for all the morning trades. Leo stood back. Impeccably dressed, black bow tie, white dinner jacket, elegantly tailored, tapered dress slacks, with shiny leather shoes. Rita reached for a flower from a table vase and turned to pin the red carnation on Leo's lapel, giving him color to his manly ensemble. Leo floundered a moment. Rita winked with as gracious a smile as she could please, reaching for a cocktail and taking a half-hearted sip. You can put this in your notepads, boys. Willie Brown is a tough and rough talker for an interloper but very green to the game. He should show a little respect for the city's mayor. Humphreys is no blowhard in this firestorm, Rita explained loudly as all cell phones were set on record. Yes, you can take that to the bank, guys. He is being backed by $10 million in union contracts for the city as of this afternoon. Leo winked over his shoulder at Rita, above the reporter's howls. I should not have to tell any of you, Willie Brown is a heartless, witted con artist like those canny and steamily gangster flicks that Ms. Hayworth refuses to appear in. Curiously, the cigar-smoking Humphreys sipped white champagne from a crystal goblet, invoking an epithet for a Phrygian campaign fight. The bout would be his latest step in the quest for his re-election. Unbelievable, you just can't comprehend the subnormal, low-life creatures that crawl out of the gutter like a pair of snakes, Willie Brown and the satanic witch. The mayor stood up after a few drinks. Well, people of Phantasma, maybe they won't get away with it. We all know there is only so much mischief one can tolerate in fools, and my new message is out now. He clambered over the drunken and lucid crowd of bankers and high-power investors that rushed him with loud bolstering cheers. Bravo! Bravo! For he is a jolly good fellow, Mayor Humphreys, and no one can deny. They cheered him on, smashing their glasses to the walls. He had his chest out like a general covered with war medals and joyful pessimist grin. Screaming for attention, he went off like a fire alarm, by all accounts, a political junkie at first-hand experience, flamboyant, and a bit stifling, confronting his own career crisis, expressing a sentiment echoed by others crowding the turf, with an agenda of over-ambitious yuppies celebrating their stronghold of nouveau riche, senses of the future as if dreams were the toughness of true character for the culture elitists. Basking among the supermodels, Mayor Humphreys had cast his net like a gesture of affection. The party was big enough for everyone there as Leo and Rita were seen hugging at the bar full of reports. Downing his martini in a single gulp, Leo caught the flash of disdain on a reporter's face that turned around with an arched eyebrow and said, Mr. De Leon, how are you and new rival Lady Satan getting along? For the gossip fodder, I will never be involved in any nefarious activity with that unholy woman and her new protege, William Brown. Leo froze with his hand in his pocket. What's this, you and the dazzling Miss Hayworth? Do I have an exclusive with all that money trickling up this evening? The journalist asked. We are of legal age. I would have to be blind not to recognize her, as you can see. She classes up this joint, and yes, we are friends. We all need a little help now and then. Leo smiled, engaging as ever. They are all right in my book. Mayor Humphreys appeared behind them both as if to rescue the moment, and a tabloid romance story in the making. Chapter 20. Hype. 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 Star power. The very next day, with reservations for two, on a cloudy morning sky, Rita invited Leo DeLeon to a late brunch at Tiffany's. It was an invitation he eagerly accepted as they planned the PR for the mayor's campaign. Suddenly, a number of men looked in their direction with collective, warmly appreciative glances. Rita looked like a stunner in the light rain, dressed in her oriental orange silk suit. They clinched in a smooch-like fashion, crossing the busy street under his big black umbrella. A reporter took exuberant note of the couple's conspicuous browsing expedition at Tiffany's, where Miss Hayworth was having her pearl bracelets clasp fixed. From her early explosive rise to stardom, she had always attracted the American public's eye. In the celeb-starved hoi polloi, Leo DeLeon joked as the cocky reporter, Arthur Winchell, with the tendency of initial public offerings, jostled the rumor, and not yet technically engaged. Rita and Leo both smiled foolishly at him, then ducked into her awaiting pearl-white limo, adding more gossip to the Phantasma's mayoral race and Hollywood's tabloid curiosity. On this star-studded power evening, it was like taking in a deep breath, exhilarating, but without the nasty gas fumes. By 7:30 p.m., traffic on Broadway Boulevard slowed to a stop. Chauffeur-driven limousines and expressive foreign cars clogged the route in front of the Gershwin Theater. The swelling crowds of sparkling, affluent people glamorized the setting for the latest Hollywood premiere, Columbia Studios' Gilda. With mounting enthusiasm, the public eagerly mingled among the city's press agents and film critics in the smoke-filled lobby. Out in the night sky, the laser lights shot straight up to the heavens, calling attention to the hottest, most talented star presence on the B-strip tonight. Compellingly, Madame Satan's grand hoax was playing well to the fans that craned necks in search of their idol, Rita Hayworth. Cautioning, holding back the curious spectators, Phantasma's Metro PD and security were very tight. On the street, the loud music from a band playing the movie's title song, Put the Blame on Mame, filled the air around them. Boldly challenged, Leo DeLeon and the mayor took the time to press the flesh. The provocative Ms. Hayworth hummed the movie theme song and glided slowly down the red carpet. Rita gave the pushing hordes of photographer and fans ample opportunity to flash away amid their dangling cameras as police rushed to hold back the crowd. Entertaining the throng of reporters with good humor, Rita smiled and dazzled the audience in her much-publicized strapless black satin evening gown, cleverly fielding questions about her recent political endorsement. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Humphreys is an honorable, trustworthy man, and so is Mr. Leo DeLeon, his campaign director and the brilliant art curator over at the Metro Museum, she quipped in a generous, expansive tone. What more needs to be said? Ms. Hayworth, but it's been leaked that only a few days ago, Humphreys was on the verge of financial ruin, ready to file bankruptcy, had it not been for your much welcome support. Please, I don't know how these rumors get started. People in the political arena take big plunges in order to ensure big successes. It's not a game for children, I can assure you. Is it true, Ms. Hayworth, that your next movie, Down to Earth, has been put on hold by big boss Harry Cohn? Another reporter persisted. Harry is Harry, but I promise you, I haven't given up my film career for politics, she countered in their laughter. Okay, fellows, see you at the pre-screening party later at Planet Mars. She turned and joined arms with both Leo and the mayor, moving slowly yet deliberately through the lobby, as they disappeared into the crowd on the eve of her pre-screening of Gilda at the Gershwin Theater. The buzzwords and clamor were left to each critic's expertise to interpret the story in their own way. Chapter 21. The Radio Hour. On this night, the public waited in long lines, standing room only inside the 50th Street Theater. It was the Lifebuoy radio sponsor hour. Next, live on the Larry King Talk Show. Please welcome tonight's guest, Phantasma's one and only Saint Ramz, the announcer said over the audience's standing ovation of applause. I applaud your heroic efforts, Saint Ramz, Larry King stated. In all honesty, you are Phantasma's heartthrob to many of my woman listeners. Thank you, Larry. But I would not take my celebrity status too seriously, Saint Ramz jested. As my first-time guest, I feel blessed to be in one's own company. But you are here tonight to publicly endorse the fine mayor of our fair city, and this is a first for you, I understand. Well, yes, Larry, and what I would like to say to all your radio listeners and fans is that I've known this mayor for some time. When you know a good man for a long time, you see his strengths and weaknesses in his personality that you just don't see in other people's character, because you don't know them or the company they like to keep these days. Saint Ramz, you will agree when I say that Mayor Humphreys is a big man and that so are many of his stories about him. As my mayor I understand it comes with the territory as you show love and respect for the man. Frankly, I will say to the voters at large that all of William Brown's lying tactics have given me a great deal of heartburn. Saint Ramz smirked. Tell me, Saint Ramz, what are your true feelings about the young huckster, I mean candidate William Brown? Larry chuckled, turning his head to one side, as the audience roared with laughter. I'm only the messenger with Mr. Brown's soundbite artistry, eager to supply well-rehearsed answers. To the left-wing press corps, he is vastly becoming a popular guy. We will agree. Mr. Brown is as fine-tuned as a fiddle, Larry King said most positively. But I see the race issue as being about strong character and values. It's about family and fundamental change. Mr. King, I'm not here to spotlight William Brown. I just hope the voters give the mayor the certitude and lead him to victory at the polls on election day. Please call me Larry. But do I note some cynicism? I know you would like to take a piece out of Willie's sails to educate my listeners. I'll say, but, Phantasma citizens, you know I'm not here to pay homage to Mr. Brown's unbridled arrogance. He is a blooper on my radar, and I can't wait for the day his soul cracks wide open, just long enough for a quick, reassuring peek for all to really see the man for what he is. Saint Ramz, we all know he is gaining momentum in all the phone polls, Larry voiced. When do you think Mr. DeLeon and the Humphreys camp will take the big guns out? I see Ms. Hayworth has been added to the playbook. Now, for my part, those who like to see William Brown elected as mayor of this city get in the ratlin. There is something almost chemical in his attraction for certain kind of vermin. The saint bolted to his feet. Could we all take this to mean Madam Satan, he hinted. Larry, this race is not exactly a love-boat connection, and that is all I wish to say on this matter. Saint Ramz sounded as if he was taken into protective custody and allegedly all lawyered up. Well, folks, you all heard it first live on Larry King. With all the provoking antics, Saint Ramz made the ripping headlines and a new war of words. Willie Brown backed by Cash Cow and the Ratlin, the press wrote, echoing loudly, which offered a cynical look at the race for mayor, with all the cheap slapstick gags flying faster than silver bullets in a sterling haze. Madam Satan had her one-way ticket on the road out of Phantasma, while Saint Ramz turned the public jitters to a soaring spectacle of the printed word. The next morning, a blizzard of articles read like a chain letter, and the terms of the last will and testament were stacking up on the walls of every newsstand in the city. Chapter 22. Showtime at the Garden. In a word, Phantasma City wasn't just a destination. It was another world, a place that was unlike anything ever experienced, where the excitement and headlining entertainment were unmatched, like an explosion. Rita Hayworth would provide the perfect backdrop for the American Dog Kennel Club, making it spectacular. Clearly, this fundraiser had all the stops pulled tonight at Madison Square Garden. Amid the loud barking and howling of the canines, it was showtime at the Garden. Life, liberty, and just about anything to press the fat wallets open and push the envelopes were the order of the night. Under the guidance of his trainer casting a large looming shadow on the wall, the story of Joe Boxer was told. Spectators crowded in like a sporting event. Lights. Sound. Action. Don Leo DeLeon stepped into the spotlight, dressed in a t-shirt, baggy red trunks, and boxing gloves, twisting, turning, and jabbing, his feet bouncing about, giving a stirring portrayal of a up-and-coming young prize fighter. Trailing behind him, Rita was being pulled by two tan-colored English bulldogs on leather leashes. Holding a pup anchored to her hip, she stole the hearts of dog fanciers there. Happily, the parade of the pedigree hounds followed a path lined by blue-ribbon bearded irises and potted hedges and tropical foliage. "Hey, Gilda, you look hip," a reporter yelled jovially. "Yeah, babe," another said, like a man wanting to fool around. "I'm Rita, not Gilda, boys, but I'm not surprised you don't know better," she responded instantaneously, propelling herself halfway up the runway after too many amorous glances in the wrong direction. That added to her spangled-weighted 50-carat earrings that brushed up against her lovely shoulders, helping to escape the worries of the world. Call them magic or just plain hokum. Either way, there's no denying they both have fundraising powers and a dream team, I'd say, the mayor shouted to the press. Cool, calm, and non-objective, Leo's eyes swept Rita from head to toe. It was easy to see why everyone there was dazzled by her in an emerald green pantsuit. This is what can happen when you let the primates run wild. Oddly elated, Rita laughed in the glamour-rich event. "Rita, you're not a panacea but the real dose. You've made marshmallows out of all of us here tonight," Leo said as his silhouette jabbed the air. "You don't know what it means to hear you say that to me." "I don't know which of us is the most fortunate," she said, tossing her long red hair back over her shoulders. "To me, you still are the most fascinating of men in Phantasma, as is the saint." She winked back at his boyish grin. Under the blinding lights and the camera's flashing bulbs, they both enjoyed the night's positive feedback from the press's interviews, making this a grand blowout at the Garden's American Dog in Kennel show. The intensity was the strongest part of the game. Rita got the money endorsement as promised, not just as a pretty face standing on the curbside but as an active ingredient with lots of press, photos. High above the manly art of whistles, Leo de Leon knew how well the house was built. But perhaps the greatest benefit to this campaign was the exclusive megastar experience to the public. That sounded as an all-out brain-rattling live performance expressed by Hayworth's very grateful fans, without an upset, a true Hollywood original and class act appreciated by millions of moviegoers. Chapter 23. The Candidate. Hitting the talk show circuit, late in the afternoon, the airwaves were abuzz. Viewers had all been watching Channel 2 TV on camera starring RuPaul, the flamboyant drag queen of Phantasma, and his featured guest, Madam Satan. Hello. Hello, world and fans of TV on camera. Welcome to my big show. I'm so pleased. Jumping to Pika. I hope when the smoke clears, this will settle all arguments in a hurry. Without further ado, please give a big hand to my guest today, Ms. Madam Satan. Thank you, RuPaul. Let me say that in these politically correct times, I am not here as a big fan of yours, but we both know that before the evening is over, you will be enjoying the highest talk show ratings ever. What's up, madam? Should I thank you now or make a call to my broker to stock up on the capital gains and blue chips? Look, as you well know, I'm not part of any Christian coalition. But certain people and things enjoy reputations not justified by their social usefulness, Madam Satan said, clawing the edge of the host's desk. Like some irritating phenomenon that drops in out of nowhere. RuPaul smiled back with a snap of his fingers. RuPaul, you called me, lest you forget, as did Oprah, Sally, and Jerry Springer. Don't forget David Letterman and Jay Leno, but admittedly, I was getting pretty tired of the deadpants, the gun-crazed wackos, RuPaul said in a state of gracelessness. Enough. With your homeboy attitude. I like to get a line in on the objectivity and fairness to my candidate. Speaking off the cuff, for the listeners, might it be said that you and Saint Ramz have a war of egos? RuPaul clasped hands and winked at the camera lens. Like heaven and hell, she answered in a sound bite. Ms. Satan, would it be fair to say that you are obsessed with the saint as everyone else on the team in Phantasma? Call me old-fashioned, RuPaul. But there wouldn't be a cover deal or an interview with People magazine waiting for me if I weren't, would there? She hinted. You're pissing funny, madam, but I'll handle all the one-liners. Look, you may be the chutzpah of the bitchy talk show world and the uncontested queen of glib, but I'm not here to contribute to your naughty mouth. Vitriol you heap on the viewers every day. Welcome to showbiz. But we can cut the plain old hanky-panky talk and get to the bare-ass facts, RuPaul jested. I'm here today on behalf of my candidate, Mr. William Brown. He is my choice for mayor of Phantasma, and I might add, he is as American as the hot dog. She smiled into the camera. How amusing can you be? I'm sitting on mine. How bad can I be? RuPaul added for the entertainment shock value as the audience roared in hysterics. RuPaul, I can assure you that your blissful state is no Oscar-winning performance in the light of things to come here in Phantasma. No, but it can't hurt my ratings today. Let Madam break it to you gently, RuPaul. You and your boy toy that you sit on will never work for the Disney studios, you can bank on that. Excuse me, back to your varmint, Willie. Oh, my pink tongue slipped. I meant to say, your candidate for mayor. I just would like to say that Mr. Leo De Leon and Saint Ramz would have everyone in Phantasma believing that there is an epic struggle between good and evil, Humphreys and Brown. This all sounds like sibling rivalry, but do tell. Set the record straight. Let the peace-loving public in on the turbulent race for mayor, madam. They choose to make William Brown's private life public in a documentary by painting a shocking portrait of his self-acclaimed millionaire's tempestuous past and the scandalous ambition of one Kyrie Parker. For your viewers, you must keep a positive frame of mind. William will bring much energy and willingness to the common man, a real healthy humility to the office of mayor that seems to be missing nowadays. I've heard about the campaign TV ads, where William Brown is branded as the ugly American. I did not come here to breastfeed the voters, but it's bullshit. Those ads running are toothless with no red meat for the people of Phantasma. Well, we don't need the old mayor and his toilet water ideas. Brown is the bridge to this millennium, so I'm asking the public to help elect him. He is the right man for the job. Ms. Satan, what about Mr. Brown's ads attacking the mayor on his record on crime, taxes, and the over-budget Summer Olympic Stadium? Why ask me? Humphreys has got his feet stuck in the mud up to his yang. His camp is worried about the entire backlash now. And why? Yes. Why, Madam Satan? RuPaul asked most excitedly. Why? Because Humphreys has refused to debate my candidate on the real issues, plain and simple. Humphreys is too chicken. She leaned back in a relaxed pose. The time has elapsed, madam. Please come back. Viewers, keep those cards and emails coming along with your show ideas. RuPaul stood up with microphone in hand and left in closing, singing the show's theme song. Snapshot, as he sparkled for the camera. Chapter 24. Blasting the Opponent. Within the political winds of Phantasma, Madam Satan became the evil eye of the storm that was feeding all the city's gossip columns. On a quest far from playing the old snarling bull, Mayor Humphreys seemed to be having fun. With the help of Rita Hayworth, he could count on her star power, welcoming the bankers and rainmakers eager to make their promises and raise $50,000 each by the week's end. Leo's pristine image spoke to his skill in attacking the opponent for attacking his candidate. The William Brown organizers' hunger for true conviction proved too zealous even for Leo De Leon by using new negative spots to win it ugly, trying to destroy Humphreys. The Will camp released a text as they headed into the crucial last days: you can't keep taking from Peter to pay Paul. This had the people thinking about the issues of Willie as a politician, sensing wide and profound dissatisfaction with the status quo. The weekly newspaper polls so powerfully revealed that there was, in Phantasma, a sweeping and deeply held belief that it was over for the old boy. Times were changing, time for Mr. Humphreys to retire and go fishing on a very slow boat to Havana, Cuba, or maybe go to China to visit the Great Wall. Undeterred, the Humphreys team and the nuns handed out campaign buttons and banners as they marched down the street to St. Andrew's venerable red stone steps. Leo, Willie may have the locals fooled into thinking he walks on water like the reincarnation of our Savior and Lord, but we both know he is no Jesus Christ, Mayor Humphreys stated. Look out, Mayor, those boys, punks are throwing things, eggs, and stuff. Leo screamed as witnesses followed the yolk stains on the walls and sidewalk. Rita looked back at Leo, not knowing how to respond. "Well, you just can't sit on your haunches and not want to howl," she remarked coyly. "This should set the gossip columnists' forked tongues wagging," Humphreys said in a stupor as the press people gathered around them. "Oh, no, Leo. In this mayhem, I've lost my tiny gold cross," Rita cried out with an elusive quality of sadness. Surprised, Leo de Leon looked down over the church's steps. "Don't fret, Rita. It's here somewhere. We'll find it. I know we will." High up inside the castle, Madame Satan glanced at the entire scene below through her large blue crystal ball. "I've lost my tiny gold cross." She gritted her teeth, and with saturated wisdom, she thought. "It's time for a little sacrifice. Bring me out the sheep for some bloodletting," she ravishingly dispensed. "Well, at last you found something to celebrate about," Tartu sounded sneaky as always as he preened the tip of his long goatee. "Tartu, go away. I won't let you upset my sublime moment," she ordered and relaxed back on her golden throne, awaiting the final curtain to drop. Her smug face and far and distant expression knew Miss Hayworth would soon be a beautiful thing of the past. Chapter 25. The Farewell Address. Newsweek went to where no other cameras were allowed, backstage at the Trump Grand Hotel. Behind the curtain, Leo de Leon looked like he was barely hanging on when the news came on NBC.com that William Brown was the projected and clear winner in the exit polling, who was now looking shocked and surprised at Humphreys' last-place finish and the dark days ahead for all of Phantasma's citizenry. He was a warrior who is thrilled at the sight and the smell of first blood. Humphreys stood proud in front of the podium. "Well, the hour is late, my friends. I want to thank Mr. Leo de Leon for all his support and time from the museum, Rita Hayworth, the most beautiful actress ever, the people of this great city. I stayed with the message. I never let the polls affect me. I won't let the election results affect me. I have just conceded the race on the cell phone to my opponent, Mr. William Brown, the next mayor of Phantasma." The ex-mayor gave a last wave to the crowd and walked away in defeat. "It's a sorry scene, but the rich boy coughed up the big bucks and voters at large," a newscaster said to the cameraman broadcasting on CNN Worldwide. In a pigsty, Leo de Leon made the argument. The wish tax means no taxes in Willie's platform as part of some kooky mantra. Madame Satan cooked up subliterate gibberish by making the working man look as if he were taking a licking. Leo summed up his case on the network TV interview after the race. "How can 20 million voters be so wrong? It's an outrage to hear of thousands of spoiled ballots hanging chads, missing ballot boxes," he said in disgust and disappointment, which included a certain tinge of sadness for the inherent weakness of the human creature. Leo de Leon turned and walked, holding Rita's hand. Carefully, Rita, with tears in her sad brown eyes, looked up at Leo. In her Shanghai suit, she said, "I guess this is the end of the road for us." "What's wrong? Are you trying to unload me, Rita?" he asked without hesitation. In the moment of revelation, her fidgety response was, "Please don't ask me any questions. I have to leave now, but I will try to come back if I can. Just remember what I've said." She turned, fighting back salty big tears. Hoping to escape Madame Satan's grip, she ran from Leo's side out the back doors into the pitch of darkness but could not elude her captors, the winged demons of Satan who swooped down like clumsy stagecraft, totally perplexing creatures and whining like hungry dogs. No longer the stuff of legends or pure attraction with no mercy, they carried her away, fading from view in the late evening sky. Across town, steal big, win big. Geeky, with the lethal, seductive thrill, at the Ritz Hotel, inside the Crystal Hall, Willie Brown appeared ecstatic about the results as Mr. Money headed toward the center of the platform stage. "Let's hear it for William Brown, our very next mayor of Phantasma City," Madame Satan declared. "Tonight, we celebrate our landslide victory. A weaker politician might have buckled, but not Phantasma's golden boy. Speech. Speech." Speech, the crowd clamored and chanted as big red, white, and blue balloons floated about the massive hall. Willie stepped up to the podium and delivered one of his smoothest speeches since the campaign had begun. I may be known to many of the voters as the rich guy in all the ads, but there has been an abundance of contradictions by the ex-mayor. A man posing today as the outsider seems to have profited handsomely once for being the insider himself. The man who complained about the mudslinging was the first to scoop it up. Willie voiced with a clip on his grin. Mistakes were made, but the true key is to learn from them. I have and have moved forward. It is time for Mr. Humphreys to do same. Willie Brown, you are a cheap, worthless carpetbagger. An old nun waved a black umbrella at him. It was Sister Jamie. What in the world is your beef, sister? The taxpayers won't have to pay any more taxes. Shocked, acting boyishly cute with his disgustingly greasy hair and snooty English manner, Willie remarked in an incomparable happiness like the joy of coming home from a hard-fought war. You are so full of muster, sonny boy. A big phony we will all soon find out. The election was rigged, stolen by all those demons up there with you tonight, Sister Jamie said, being taunted and jeered by the Madam Satan campaign volunteers. Somebody, quickly throw the old biddy out. Willie Brown said with lusty defiance. She must be out of rehab. From what I hear, she has a drinking problem. Suddenly, a less ambitious man and a living repository of drinking wisdom pushed a whiskey bottle into her hand and whisked the old nun in annoyance away. At day's end, the truth was not in Willie but in a higher kind not wasted on trivial matters as Madam Satan waved to the crowd alongside the newly elected mayor. She felt that the end was near and that the quest for the not-so-invincible Saint Ramz was at her enameled red fingertips' reach. Chapter 26. Man of the Year. With a mere 90 days in office, Phantasma was no longer Camelot for the new mayor, who was not a resourceful man in the grimes of times, in a city that had made him a kind of a tyrant. Inevitably talking establishment and with his ego, the ultimate award for William Brown to behold was on the roster of Times magazine's cover, Man of the Year, chosen by their entire readership. Ironically, the Times officials had planned on holding a civic luncheon to celebrate but cancelled the big bash, and his hopes were dashed. In his collective consciousness, Mayor Brown shattered a glass of water against his large looming oil portrait on the wall. With palpable regrets, he caught wind of the continued muckraking over the city's finances and money resources by the resurgence of new headlines: no taxes, no revenue, Phantasma gone bust. Willie Brown, having glanced over the afternoon newspaper, went into a blind rage. Is there no shame with ink on their paws? These tabloid reporters are not embarrassed by their trashy paparazzi image, stalking me for a kill. Well, boys, I won't just stand on the sidelines and do nothing. Willie shouted and grabbed his red phone. Inside the dark grey castle, reclining on a royal purple chaise lounge, Madam Satan held up a cell phone to her ear. Calm down, William. Yes, it's indisputable that I used my powers and influence to win you the election, but there was never a talk about a bailout. I never promised you a rose garden. She paused. And it would be most controversial if I now fork over $1 billion as a charitable donation to the city of Phantasma. Besides, I'd be seen as a bag woman, none too bright in the eyes of Saint Ramz. Not to think about Mr. De Leon being emotionally unstable after the heated mayoral race. He'd see it as a bribe, and newsmen would repeat the story from his handsome and insatiable lips. Madam, I'm desperate. Do you not want me to avoid a huge scandal? I beg. You. Willie ran his hands through his oily hair. William, you can't blackmail me to save your skin. Remember who owns your soul, lock, stock, and barrel. I've given you plenty, the keys to this city. Let's not forget the typical excess of your bohemian lifestyle, wild women, and plenty of recreational drug use. Saint Ramz should take out some life insurance. There is no more money in the coffers of Phantasma to pay city workers or police who, soon may riot in the streets, Willie ranted. Alone, Saint Ramz cannot patrol the streets for the elderly residents to walk safely at night. When Saint Ramz comes to his senses, he need only ask, and I will graciously help him. I'm at his command. She fantasized. My reputation is not all bad. Ha! And get scorched in baptism by fire against your evil forces that have poisoned the winds of Phantasma already. William shouted in a bloodlust rage. You're a parasite feeding off the defenseless. Careful, William, a bolt of lightning could shatter through your very office window as we speak, she threatened. No matter, I see the writing is on the wall. I'm ruined, and I know it's time to pay the piper when you make a pact with Satan. He stewed. Madame Satan stood up, snapping shut her cell phone. Poor little Willie. He just doesn't get it or does not have it in him anymore. Echoing from the dark hall, Tartu said, Madam, it seems Helton has disappeared. Oh, my furry feline, he's run off again to prowl Phantasma. Like you, he has probably found some fascination, no doubt. Someday, your words will not serve you, Tartu. She promised and ran out to the terrace of the castle. Glancing over Saint Ramz's crumbling empire, she said, It won't be long, dearest Ramz, when I will soon be within your sweaty and saintly arms. Chapter 27. Article of Faith. It was dusk. The sun had just set over the horizon. The church's wooden doors were wide open to all who passed by them, rich man, poor man, beggar man, and thief. Leo de Leon was walking his dog, Spot, when he stopped right in front of St. Timothy. The nuns were having their evening choir practice high up on the balcony. Their joyous sounds had been so inviting and uplifting that Leo decided to stop in and sat in the back row. His will was almost undone. He felt so unlucky. How could the world be saved? Worst case was, Leo was no longer sure it deserved to be rescued. An old black man stumbled into the pew and sat next to him. The man never introduced himself. His shoulder bumped Leo's as they sat side by side. The man smelled of stale booze. Don't stare at me. I don't have a problem with alcohol, the stranger moaned in despair. Respectfully, you don't look like it. Leo replied, smelling the fumes of morality, right or justifiable. Squeamish, the worn-out old man stood up, looked around, and walked away as if he felt the enemies were following him. Devastated by the principalities, it was like spreading famine and disease. Unable to comprehend his own hunger for the word of God, he truly was a lost soul. These days, there were many on the streets that would not be saved: squatters, panhandlers, and thieves. The human brutality was almost too much to bear. The very walls of his mind seemed to be crumbling. Leo found his secret oath almost undone as he sat in the house of worship. There was a thirst for the truth, and only God knew that he needed to hear that. He could not regard all that had happened as a mere myth, nor was he being tested to see what he was righteously made of. Leo took to his feet. Oh, Lord, is there a moral lesson in your holy doctrine? When there is nothing left of temptation, no one can lay claim to serve virtue. I too need a sign, a code of conduct put forward by the Church's teachings. I have my strong beliefs of right and wrong and a search after justice. Chapter 28. Seeking Asylum. Amid the night's mist in full black mask and in an unsavory mood, Saint Ramz looked down over his shoulder, scrutinizing the evil corruption and decadence that lingered over the city's once opulent surface. In the pervasive aura of hopelessness, a biblical twist evoked the Sodom and Gomorrah splendor of Phantasma in its last days. A subterranean world of cults was growing beneath the city. In the heart of darkness, a woman's loud screams were heard, guided by the high-pitched Afenji words, as she was being dragged, kicking, and clawing at her abductors, who cast their murderous shadows high up on the graffiti walls. In panic, Saint Ramz pounced into action, dodging bullets, as he attempted to stop the crime, looming like a giant over a dangerous field and scoring a one-man blitz. In the street wrangles, the swine-jawed thugs thought better and managed to escape from the bullishness of Saint Ramz's overpowering blows. It was like the running of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain. Caught in the spoils of evil and dressed to the nines, the lady in distress spearheaded a feisty, demure tone, looking up at Saint Ramz. So we are forced to meet again, if you remember me from Madame Satan's masquerade ball. I must look like a mess. I feel like pulling the twigs out of my hair and wanting a fine manicure, don't you agree? She asked, not looking for a quarrel. No, Condessa. I find you completely engaging, but not so wise to be walking alone this late. These nights, Phantasma isn't exactly an Amish country, would you agree? He said, not to bicker. And miss this opportunity with you. Strictly speaking, as Condessa de Dolores, you are a beacon of faith and goodwill, she purred with an intrusive charm. And I now know what makes Saint Ramz the Ram of God. If only that rang true, I could circumvent Madame Satan's ills. She is the only source of my social woes here in Phantasma, he stated, as it was hard to seek revenge on a lovely, flirtatious creature from which he was dashing away from. At my own risk of suffering at her hands, there is something you should know about. But it is not the wisest of moments for me to speak. Still, my heart wants to tell you. Funny thing, hearts and the power they hold over us. She too felt the tension riding high between them. In the darkness, a noise was heard, then an inquisitive purr from above a windowsill. It's only an alley cat and not our worst fear. Saint Ramz said. You were about to tell me something. Oh, yes, she said, as his cape parted open in the steamy breeze, and a faint smile appeared on her face, knowing the same feelings she now shared with Madame Satan. In the dramatic night, their stunning images held still as the nuance of her whispered words told Saint Ramz the wicked scenario. So you see, Saint Ramz, I have no qualms with you even if the curtain was to drop on me at this very moment. So that's why she left. Rita is an incarnation. I could bet to the heavens, but we all have our crosses to bear in life, and she will be mine. You shouldn't be too hard on yourself, Saint Ramz. There are mysteries and limitations to mankind. This could only mean we are near the end, a time of trial and tribulation, she sounded eerily. In other words, a most unfortunate assumption on your part, but for me, there is grief and redemption for both our very soul this night. Please don't think me soulless, but I've got to go. I don't want to find myself in a flower-adorned coffin just yet. Condessa, wait. If you're seeking asylum, I can help find a sanctuary, a place of refuge, and it's your only salvation, the house of God. You can't mean the monastery with those priests and nuns. Yes, St. Timothy's. You'd be on holy ground, and Father Adolfo would be glad to watch over you, he heroically assured her, but the Condessa did not know if she should decline the invitation, as he was pleasantly suave in the evening's chaos. With the midnight ringing of bells, they ran across the street, strutting up the church steps, as she entered through the wooden doors. Adios, amigo. She smiled and turned away into a vast hall covered with ceiling frescoes. The Condessa now found protection under the sign of the cross. Saint Ramz was left to his own means as he leaped from building to building with ramming speed and the sure-footed balance of a cliff-dwelling ram on the highest peak as he stood atop of the Empire State Building. Chapter 29. Sound of Silence. Inside St. Timothy's, immensely moving, a reporter quoted, "I've seen it all with their peculiar black garments and celibacy lifestyle. Its church's traditional emphasis on ritual, and now for the Conservative Catholic League to look upon one of their own men of the cloth as a dangerous revolutionary, and other big problems like the reports of planted bombs under the church's foundation by some atheist extremes group. Still shining through most strongly is the priest's weariness, his morale, and decisions of human emotions. Sister Rosemary went about her spiritual duties with such stirring intensity. This ardent nun in your face was not to be taken for granted as she stood near the doors. Welcome, dear friends. The Holy Father and the priest of this Catholic parish was no fool. Yes, the consequence for the devout legions under his care could be fairly grave in these darkest of times. Sister Rosemary shifted her teary eyes to steal a glimpse of the Father. When the priest appeared with the crucifying flesh wounds, stigmata, the people there wept openly. He welcomed the disbelievers with compassion and humility, holding the palms of his hands up in the air. Speaking as Father Adolfo, "I'm not here to inspire other imitators," he stated. "But as a man of the cloth in the Catholic clerical structure, I have to confess that having suffered the pain, this is still a miracle from God." His face was serene, shining, and hopeful too. In the sound of silence, the whole congregation bowed their heads as the choir sang with stark white faces. Identities thrown together, including clergymen from every walk of life, nothing sacred probably acknowledged much of phantasma in the graying twilight, as faith knew neither victory nor defeat but impenetrable conviction. Saint Ramz's life was extraordinarily difficult, his responsibility so overwhelming that only the dullest of minds would feel suffocated by the weight on his chest and shoulders. He stood by the chapel pillar next to a Jesuit missionary, who was a breed apart from other men. Like a colleague, Saint Ramz confessed, "I am struck at this point by your overpowering sense of spiritualism. What might this be, holy man? My son, I have devoted my life pondering the unanswerable question, not the instant kind. What fills our hearts is faith. You must hang on to it and the impossible task of doing God's will." Not bothering to lower his voice, the Jesuit smiled at him. Above the eloquent words and proper punctuation, Father Adolfo was giving Mass as Saint Ramz entered and kneeled in confession at a private altar surrounded by red wax candles. His eyes looking upward at the large bronze cross on the wall, he asked, "Lord, you are, by far, the most powerful figure of authority. I am but a man who loves you, and Phantasma's protector. I'm finding it an impossible task against Madame Satan's diabolical scheme. Help me, please." Saint Ramz cried as a silvery glow played upon his mask, as well as the golden horns from the high vaulted ceilings, powerful portals enough to bring in the starlights shining and looming like ghosts in the vast darkness of the heavens. It was getting late as the church bells rang out, and Bishop Kelly was sitting inside Mother Superior's office, facing the votive candle on the table that glowed upward toward a large statue of the Holy Mary, Mother of Mercy. Sitting back in her wooden armchair, Mother Superior looked warily at him, with her hands crossed over her desk. "Bishop, I feel the sadness in Leo's eyes like I never have seen before, and this troubles me to no end. The truth is, as reality seems out of fashion at the present time, and our baby Leo literally has grown so fast, as do all boys next door do. But, in his case, St. Timothy's was his stomping grounds," she said. "The young man is strong in his spirit from the time he was 6, fending those nightly children dreams. That reflects a basic innocence and a fairy-like veneer of optimism in their tiny world," the bishop stated as he raised his head back. "I too remember looking down at his beaming smile, waving his little hands for attention, but these days, I don't know if he could sound out a battle cry. However, Bishop, the church has always been his shrine. No weathered stone altar from hell will weaken him. Leo serves only one man, who is God." She pressed her eyes shut. "We are a part of the new human condition, and Leo's salvation is a career so long as he can justify it to himself. Allowing Saint Ramz to be part of his soul, this is the compromise to his principles in order to achieve glorification. But what has made him question and dislike himself is to view Saint Ramz as a brotherhood. And all because of the holiest of institutions that he has vowed to honor and protect." The bishop stood up from his chair and walked around it. "At the cost of Leo's body and soul, Saint Ramz has made him a smashing success. His fortune has risen, and this is just the beginning, not the ending of the relationship with God, the light." Mother Superior smiled with great pride in her voice. "The hour is late, and I must leave, but I will talk to Father Adolfo to have a word with our Leo. I will pray for his soul. May his days be long on this earth he walks on," the bishop stated, unapologetic. "Yes, for Madame Satan has come to end them." She sighed. The bishop peered doubtfully at her. "Yes, for this evil one has come for him." Bishop Kelly realized what Mother had said. It sounded impolite as she staggered to her feet as he then put his arm around her shoulders. "We both must do much work to help him from this curse that has befallen Phantasma," Mother Superior said grimly and made the sign of the cross, the ultimate sanctification. The bishop shook his head and stepped away. Before she could say another word, he had glided out the office door. Mother Superior locked the office door behind him. Phantasma felt different after sundown. She then knelt before the statue of Mother Mary and began to pray on her silver rosary aloud. The mark of the beast was upon a Catholic canonization to Ramz's sainthood. Chapter 30. Vengeful God. It was early morning and the start of a new week. Abuela Zima threw open the heavy green curtains as she held a glass of carrot juice on silver tray. Rise and shine, Leo, my dear heart and soul. You must get out of this large bed. It was not made to be your coffin. Abuela, please close the drapery and go away. I don't want to be bothered, he moaned profusely at her. Looking down at her grandson's torso lying on the Roman canopy bed, Abuela sighed. Leo, you must try to get out of bed. It's not good to keep yourself penned up for days this way. Abuela, for what obvious reason, my life is one big mess. He smirked, with one eye open, and pulled the two pillows over his head. Tell me about this paranoia you are living in. To be more direct, Leo, you have not lost yet. We do not have a vengeful God. I beg you not to reject my criticism and bemoan the gloomiest ordeal Phantasma has ever gone through, she quoted famously. But, Abuela, I find it hard to relate. My brave heart is no longer in it, he answered, ambivalent to the reality around him. No, you can't be tortured by self-doubt but paralyzed to let this despicable creature take Phantasma from your grip. This will not elevate you to celestial glory when the city's people need you more than ever. Abuela, you are right. Then help me by pulling out my most magnificent Saint Ramz suit to wear tonight, he asked, sitting up. Yes, Leo, right away. Abuela Zima answered in disbelief. Oh, thank you, Almighty God. With a quick glance out the window, she made the sign of the cross. I must not let Phantasma die without a fight. Leo shouted. I still have my faith, Abuela. They both hugged and affirmed their belief in God, the light. He now looked irradiated as if he bore a new fire within himself. Chapter 31. Devils and Angels. Blessed with regrettable wisdom beyond his years and great courage, the saint stood as a man in front and before a tidal wave of evil over his homeland, having a fixed look. From a high perch below him dwelled the citizenry that he alone must defend, which is likened to a sure-footed ram high on the side of a cliff. Induced by anger, he desperately must find a way to keep the faith of his own being, no matter what the physical punishment may be, Satan or no Satan, as tasteless as it sounded. By his blood vow, there would be no mercy for him. He was bound and had sworn to God to stand tall against this cloud of darkness. While a warm breeze battered his black cape, Saint Ramz heard a man's screams down below on the sidewalk and in front of a Goodwill store. In the pool of different scrapping voices, the sound of sheer panic rang in his ears. It took him a moment to realize that it was the work of thugs, young teens in hoodies. Like the hooves of a ram, his long legs and feet kicked out from under him as he crashed down to the scene's commotion. This was the newest kind of fight, young white-hooded cultists in their lawlessness. Their enthusiasm drove the fanatical and absolute with the same kind of zeal that fueled the madness over the great city. But they would not rule the busy streets of Phantasma this night. They had the advantage of numbers, but Saint Ramz had the power and the experience. On this trick-or-treating night, the Halloween beggars ran wild in the streets of Phantasma. Jesus Christ, give me a break. This certainty moved him back. The gray matter had cleared from his mind to what must be done. It would not do for the mighty Ram of God to just crawl into a dark furrow in the black pavement. With threatening fear glaring in his eyes and no more time to swear, "Holy shit," he took a deep breath, smelling the thick metal fumes from the street. He then jumped into the fray as the hoodlums exploded away from him like bowling pins. They had just been tossed by white beams of light coming from Saint Ramz's fists, sending them through a shopping window with lots of loud breaking glass. Ramz's weight shifted, twisting his body and then blocking the thug's right forearm, causing his fist to rebound into the face of one of the creepy assailants, who ran away wheeling a baseball bat in white clothing now tattered to shreds. "Are you all right, Jesuit?" Saint Ramz asked, testy. "Yes, just my humble pride was hurt. I don't know much of the social set. I'm here on the street to take care of the needy with my lonely kettle, as you can see. My arm is a bit sore from ringing the heavy bell, and this old wooden staff of mine was of no help in fighting off these young thieves," the bearded holy man said, brushing down on his brown Jesuit robe. "I'm forced to conclude they made off with all your money and not the candy." Saint Ramz said, a little sentimental on this not-so-saintly Halloween night. "Yes, but God always provides." He felt Ramz's wounded pride as the Jesuit priest bowed down to kiss the holy secret ram ring. "Can you be sure of that?" His mouth twisted to a stormy calm. "You still cannot recognize who you really are, Ramz, because of what has befallen you. But you should realize that you are more special than the common masses in all humanity, and there is no need for you to be snide with me. Jesuit, give me some credit. I've just saved you from a beating." Saint Ramz sounded annoyed and acted out, trying to assert control over an arguably insane situation as noisy small fry ran the busy street. "Saint Ramz, I give you all the credit in the world, and would you want to know why? Well, late last night, at the mission in my small room, I had a visitation. An immense, warm light stood beside my bed. It was a Viking angel who had appeared and spoke to me about an apocalypse and the end of times. Our Dear Lady of Fatima and her third prediction that was released in 2000 was not the full secret, some of which was held back by the Pope in Rome, that there would be a Savior called the Ram of God, the Light, in the last days. That is you, Saint Ramz. It seems there is more to me than I'll never know. This apparition the Viking angel did, his cries call out for my penance." He looked frightened at the mention. "Ramz, let me give you a good word of advice," the Jesuit said, "do not make the mistake of treating this creature like one of us. She will be your ruination for all eternity," he stated as young masked faces passed beside them with their noisemakers and plastic jack-o'-lanterns in tow. "What are you saying?" Saint Ramz asked, with his dancing halo radiantly aglow. "A wild animal never can be tamed, leash or no leash." He sighed. By the indomitableness of the male, Saint Ramz suddenly leaped into the air and was gone. This was no garish night dream. Life looked a lot like anarchy as a sea of Halloweeners cloyed on the crosswalks, and reality went swiftly out of fashion. Things that did not make sense started to unravel like a tire gone flat in the middle of a high-speed lane out on the interstate. Chapter 32. Day of the Dead. It was November 1st, and mid-morning. The entrance to St. Timothy's gated cemetery sign read, "Open to all visitors." People were caught in the indigenous pre-Hispanic pagan holiday spirit where the common symbol was the calaveras, the skulls made of sugar dating back to pre-Columbian past, some 3,000 years ago. All the graves were highly decorated with marigolds, painted carved skulls, fruits, candles, and pictures, as festive as a carnival, with food and drinks placed on homemade altars. It was a special day to honor the dead, a ritual that might seem odd with the bounteous offerings. It was traditionally on the Dia de los Muertos that much merrymaking, mariachi musicians would strum their guitars as they strolled through the crowds in centenarios, playing many of their favorite folk songs. Standing inside the black wrought iron gates, Leo de Leon and his abuela Zima stood on hallowed ground, with a bag full of Washington State apples and a bouquet of Aztec daisies to be placed on his parents' tomb, their resting place and lasting memorial. "This is always a sad day for me, my grandson. Your father was a great comfort to me. I now must go light some candles in the church for both your parents," she said, stepping away glumly, wiping her teary eyes. Leo bowed his head in silence and prayer, noticing that the strong winds from the night before had broken off several branches from the big old apple tree near the crypt. Pingo, the greenish imp, poked his head down from the apple tree in broad daylight like some robust and truly memorable character found in some cheap fictional comic book story. Among the many passers-by, he laughed at the children who had painted faces and scary masks. Uncompromisingly and vividly, Leo sat beside his parents' tomb in deep thought. Looking about his lowly station of existence, Pingo rejoiced at the sight of Leo that gave him two fanciful ideas. Feeling suspenseful, he grabbed hold of the bag filled with the golden red apples. His insatiable thirst for this passion fruit made him delirious happy. Pingo was most willing to indulge in the sadism of the people around him, though it was a matter of fact for this invisible creature that made himself a brilliant evocation of his own world. Pingo, I'm in no mood. Leo quickly averted his eyes to the people around them as he waved off Sister Grace and Father Adolfo, who walked among the parishioners nearby. You will never satisfy my curiosity of your true nature as Saint Ramz? Pingo asked, unlikely historical slave scholar. Nevertheless, your concerns are a matter of no importance to me, much as a trivial subject like why a dog barks. Leo said, tired and very grumpy. You sound not too happy. Pingo smiled, dressed inconspicuously, while he eschewed a bit of pomp and ceremony in a feather-stitch of color. Am I that noticeable? But why don't you enlighten me about the things that creep about phantasma behind my very back? I take this to mean Madame Satan. Should I then be exalted by your eminence? Pingo joked. Don't be pretentious or pathetic with me. I brought you a bag of juicy, ripe apples. Tastelessly, Leo then grabbed an apple from the brown paper bag and bit into it with a crunch. Leo, you know I'm your servant for life, and I say this with no feelings of animosity. Distressingly, Pingo pulled the bag away with no more apples to be shared. Indeed, you are not surprising. With all that I love, my city is quickly spiraling into decline, no thanks to Madame Satan's fatal attraction. I take it she must prefer a saint over Batman, Spider-Man or Superman. But, Leo, are you willing to give up your sainthood now? No. I'm inspired to say, much as the priesthood takes its black robes and their oath of celibacy. Leo gave him an impatient look as if to soothe a petulant child's tantrum. You can see I know nothing of Madame Satan or am not part of her inner circle. I'd be the last entity to be trusted by her. Pingo frowned. No matter now. The Viking angel has spoken, end of days. I will meet my challenge head-on. Leo stated in a disturbingly vivid manner and walked boldly away past a group of crying and yelling children and their families who spoke to them in the Spanish language. Chapter 33. The Spy Who Meowed. Miles away, the howling of a lone wolf was heard. In the distance, the royal castle could be seen by the self-important culture of Phantasma. Helton, Satan's zebra cat, climbed up the white and black marble throne purring beside Madame Satan, ready to spill a betrayal in her web of evil. If this is not the darkest hour in all phantasm over a sick and twisted affair, and there you sit with full pouting lips. Tartu's voice echoed eagerly through the chamber. I see that Helton has finally found his way back to the castle. I had assumed he too was mooning over some stray like someone else close to the royal throne. Madame Satan acted with personal displeasure but did not react. Helton, don't be so smitten. What could be on your little feline mind? Why not purr into my face and tell me everything? She smiled, looking into Tartu's eyes. A few things really are on the path of life, but with some loyalty, Helton purred into her ears. Like most seduction, it almost always went the other way. Laughingly, Madame Satan said, so Condesa de Dolores has dared to spill her guts. So the magpie has betrayed me and my foolish little game. Well, I've put Rita down a facsimile of wax, and I can put this boring bitch down too. Go figure, the saint now knows of your trickery. Tartu smirked. This was the metaphor and turning point, the inherent weakness of all the human creatures on earth, and now the line in the sand was forced to be drawn. Madame Satan stood with both arms crossed. Still, one woman can't trust another. Same old story, but I can deal with it. No matter now. I was getting tired and very bored with this charade. I have no more time to waste on a bloody quarrel with you, Tartu. What about Saint Ramz now? While we are certain he is not the Messiah, it's tough to convince everyone in Phantasma of the fact. I'm not one of the believers of the second coming, but he is the savior of Phantasma for as long as I would like him to be. She toyed over her affection, knowing all other females envisioned him as a box office champ and a legacy not well to be forgotten. Madam, if I may be so bold to ask, how much longer will this gatekeeper have his way with you? Like a laughable skit, Tartu said to manipulate her to action. It was his royal flush he unrolled in her most somber of the moments. Tartu, call out the castle's generals and pull out the war chest. I will no longer stand in Saint Ramz's shadow. He will soon see me in my true light of fire. For now, I must plan the apocalypse in Phantasma's Times Square. That is where I first entered the city and was so rudely coined Madam Satan by the old fat ox of a mayor. Well, the real story is just beyond them, and I will now show all who rules here, and it is not Saint Ramz. In the travesty, she did not overlook any of the devices for wringing the last tear from her reluctant eyes. With no redeeming qualities, Madam Satan now became judge, jury, and executioner all in one moment's notice. I can hardly believe my burning ears. Tartu ran to summon the court of Ms. Satan's generals. With plenty of glee in his step, the revolution looked like a bust from a long shot to a sure thing. This is going to be like Emperor Nero's burning of the Roman Empire, with rumors of arson and persecution of the growing Christian population. Now as history repeats itself, the burning of the imperial city of light, Phantasma. And it will all be blamed on the biggest Christian of all time, Saint Ramz, the swine. Out on the austere castle terrace that overlooked Phantasma, Madam Satan vowed, "You'll soon know there is no elixir to life, my dearest Ramz." She stood with both arms held high and a big smile that said, "You don't fuck with me, because I'll burn the house down before this night is over." Chapter 34. The Fall of Phantasma. In Times Square, the traffic had all come to a halt in a shroud of blue fog. Suddenly, a man running along the sidewalk stopped in the murk. First thing he noticed beside the sewer was the stench wafting up from the manhole covers on the street, the glint of a tall 5-story armored Trojan horse that appeared in the rolling mist of Phantasma's Times Square, striking its terror in the hearts and souls of everyone there. The silence was soon broken by the sounds of loud drumbeats and demoniac chants. The citizenry didn't exalt or embrace, they stood and watched, brooding like wounded animals, thinking that the city would not survive the destructive nature of this Trojan horse. The next explosive moment confirmed their worst fears as thousands of dwarf-like demons dropped down from the horse's hull to the pavement below, carrying bows, arrows, and torches, setting the magnificent Phantasma ablaze. Soon, the wailing sirens from the bright red fire engines could be heard for miles around. The city looked like the fall of the Roman Empire, burning out of control, jetting above at relatively low altitude and moving amid Phantasma's tallest buildings. In an array of force, the pilots from the Pentagon did not appear to have difficulty in handling their Lockheed F-9 attack turbojet helicopters. While maintaining visual contact, they joined up from the side to a trailing formation beneath the Zeppelin blimp, where Nez Perce, who was vice commander of strategic reconnaissance, comprised the elements of the ground and helicopter theater's first deployment to demolish this mighty, robotic Trojan horse in the new spiritual holy war. In front of the city hall, the invincible police stood with guns and pulled a few rapid pops that echoed. Whatever the time took to clear their clips, but even the hail of bullets was not mob rule. The people of Phantasma were out of control as frontier justice took on as an avenging justice, forced by the inept police department to take action. Looking to lynch Mayor William Brown, they were hurling bricks, bottles, and stones at the old City Hall building in frenzy, knowing that Phantasma was going down like a matchstick along with his mayoral ship and puppet regime. Everything around him was capable of changing into a misty gray fog or flying bat and wolf man. Cowardly, Willie Brown cried out, "Why me? It's up to Saint Ramz to do the right thing for the city of Phantasma now. What in tarnation are you yelling about now? Have you been smoking pot, Willie?" Saint Ramz appeared as a shadow in the darkness of the office. "You know what I'm saying is the truth. Please, please." Willie begged on his knees. "Only you can save mankind from this predator from hell." Appalled and confused, Saint Ramz finally marshaled the words to describe his torture of mind and soul at the hands of Satan's daughter. Of course, I will go with all Phantasma consumed by flames. I fear the safety of its people too, despite my own blessed life. Saint Ramz's screams were filled with a spiritualized presence showing contempt and defiance to this evil. He then vanished into the heavy smoke of the burning city that would soon go down in ashes. Shaken, Willie Brown stood up, there was a look of madness in his eyes. Giggling, he backed away from the window, still trembling in his shoes. It was important not to misrepresent reality in this city's overthrow by Madame Satan. Subjugated and terrorized, he then turned and ran down the gloomy dark hall half out of his mind as he yelled, "Hail Mary, Mother of God! Help me, for I have sinned." Mentally deteriorating but too sly to succumb yet longing for death, he lay entwined within his own web of ego and arrogance. High atop the black cliffs, Madame Satan did not need Tartu to bring such glorious news when she could see her small army from her lofty perch on the castle terrace. With the wicked sight of willful, demonic warriors battling the ever-weakening National Guard in the city, she could smell the blood and glory of her victory. "Saint Ramz, you eluded me before, but no human can escape my powers twice." She looked over the city of Phantasma with a curious mixture of anger and pleading will. Her face seemed to take on a life of its own. Her evil schemes were clever and maybe a bit not so subtle. The delicate golden olive leaf band of her headband caught the moonlight and made her look more goddess-like in her battle armor attire, fit for a true warrior princess. "Madam." Satan had paused a moment like a portrait of a stern woman but was glad she sounded the call for the fall of Phantasma over the saintly antlers of her beloved buck, Ramz, and his Puritan ways. Chapter 35. Sign of the Cross. Fighting through the smell of black smoke and panic, a crowd of do-gooders and holy men formed a mob out of the fire-torn city. Coming together to send a message to Madame Satan high atop the black cliffs, it was like a flicker of hope burning across the river and up the roadside in the torchlight rebellion. That was ethnically driven and united by all faiths amid this nightmare without end. Stealing his way into the castle, Saint Ramz entered what looked to be a mausoleum, where Rita Hayworth's wax facsimile lay enshrouded, drawn to her side like a call to arms. They say true chemistry is a rare and special thing to behold. Standing in disbelief, Saint Ramz knelt alongside the lifeless figure of the enshrined love goddess, lying somber on a death altar. In the tear-jerking mood, Saint Ramz bent down to kiss her icy red lips, having been inspired by his enduring passion. I fell for a pair of brown eyes. Deep down inside myself, I know I must let go of my feelings, Rita, he whispered, pulling her shoulder lightly as if to wake her body to life. In faith and dishevelment, the tension ratcheted upward as a regiment of combative gargoyles swarming over Saint Ramz who bound him tightly, and set against the harsh climate of unrest, he was brought to the throne room. His ram ring's powers no longer served him inside Satan's domain. In the extreme, Madame Satan seemed like a piranha in a goldfish bowl. "You don't look so good, Ramz. However, your reckless energy has been made valuable. I did not have to send for you. Besides, I knew you'd show up even if just to disappoint me," she said with a dramatic swirl of her finger. "Should I be praising you for the still flourishing interest?" Saint Ramz asked in a biting lyric, and negative reception steeped in her ravishing plot. "Ramz, I could show you the proper etiquette for eating your own words, but why wise you up?" She winked. "Try a tiny little spoon, madam." There was scorn in his voice. "No, a big shovel would be more like it. As you can see, I cater to no man. Even a saint has his limitations," she stated ardently, undedicated. "Why is it I feel as if I'm walking on hot coals whenever you're around me?" he said, looking up at the sky like a sweaty swaggering brute. "Need I remind you that you're in my sanctum?" she said villainously. "Can I be so difficult to understand? But my only reason for coming here was to ask you to stop the fires. My Phantasma is going down in flames. Have you no mercy for human life?" "Ramz, the fires have just started," she said, unfazed. "We both know you hold Phantasma as ransom between your claws. Fancy that. We both know as a devotee what it will take to put the fires out. Her voice gave out a critical point of view and an unmistakable message. I take my life and patriotism very seriously, he said. As I speak, a crusade has already started up. You can shut the noise out, but you can't stop it. Losing his cool, he cried out, casting a place for himself in biblical history. Is this the gospel according to the most beloved, Saint Ramz? Who leaves me but with no choice? You'll soon find you are not indestructible, or do you want to read it from the psychoanalyst of Salvador Dali, M. Legionnaire? Her words hardened him. What could you be thinking? Saint Ramz asked, deeply affected as he peered into her feasting eyes. Your time has expired, Ramz. I must go and get dressed for your newfound beginning. She revealed her plan, knowing he was top drawer and worth his salt. This was to be the blackest night drenched with the smell of smoke and tears. In the sounds and fury of the moment, Saint Ramz could feel the warm blood rush to his head. He staggered and tried to regain his footing but was dragged away in what was to be his execution and transformational ceremony scene. Elaborately, Madame Satan moved as if it was her starring role and exited like a finely tuned symphony, hitting all the right notes. Now and in the hereafter, the mighty Saint Ramz would be a slave to her aspersions, bound to do Satan's bidding. She was now determined to drive a thunderbolt into his trembling flesh and shackle his religious soul to gain full control of him. Chapter 36. The sword falls from the sky. From heaven's gates, where were the angels in the wake of the bloodiest battle seen to play out in the history of Phantasma? Saint Ramz's fluctuating fortune represented a microcosm of its life forces. With the smell of death at hand, the saint stood before the court of cruelty. Getting close to the unholiest hour, a new metamorphic state of mind awaited him. It was a test of faith as 6 grotesque great apes and gargoyles pounced over him as he faced the black curse from the surreal world of Madame Satan. In the freaking struggle, they managed to nail his body onto a magnificent, petrifying large wooden cross. In the electrifying mood, the pomp and celebration started under the torch-lit area. With the lighting of the silver cauldrons, the ceremony began inside the depth of the open dome area under the parody of firelight, as synchronous as trained seals, in a scene where the 7 deadly sins appeared dancing satirically like Vestal virgins or Vestal vixens over the sounds of flutes and drums. Amid the pageantry, using her own style, sitting high upon the royal stone throne, Madame Satan, in her unflappable elegance, dressed as an Egyptian monarch butterfly, with arms and hands reaching up for triumph. At the pinnacle of her glorious power, swaying voluptuously, she edged to look down at the flames below and saw that Saint Ramz's mood was souring in her grip. My beloved Ramz, you will soon know what diabolical means, she pronounced, showing no fear of meeting another emotion that infuriated him, as her face glazed over in pure contempt for all human life. Anticipating, he felt the chill. She was the enemy, and he would not cower before her. In this resurrection, you will not be satisfied with a lifeless shell of a mortal man, much less a saint. He sneered and curled his lip as the smoke billowed high around him with the foul smell of sulfur. How funny you did not believe me when I said I would have you at any cost. Soon, you will see that my world fathoms your imagination. Invincible you're not, she shouted ominously in all her new-found madness. With no pity or a squishy softness at the core, it was just a vile reminder that there would be no salvation left in this unholy union. There was an electrical current charging the air around them as the roar and clatter of the demonic forces went rattling about the huge arena. In the last final minutes, facing the consequences like the Christians of old, Saint Ramz pondered, looking upward at her. Madame Satan, where does your empathy for mankind and nature come from? You're not without charm, Ramz, but hell, if you must know, awaits us. I have no regrets, as surely, you must know me by now, she said wretchedly. Searching his mind, he said, I guess there is no hope for me. If Joan of Arc was burned as a heretic and became a saint, I can die like a man of my faith. But Saint Ramz knew better of his God and that he was the most in control of himself. Enough. Satanists, the wrath of my God will be upon you. I will no longer be able to protect you, he warned as if he wore some basic invisible repellent armor. Hardly, Ramz. Don't play the volatile scud. I'm preparing your soul, not your godly, God. Her eyes were glassing over like a rat in a dark tunnel. I know where I began, but where shall I end? This bizarre bout can only be a test of my faith. O Lord, thy holy Father who thou art in heaven, save my lowly soul from this evil, he screamed, objectionable to the proceedings. Madam Satan's theme. Saint Ramz sings out the betrayal song to the authorized remix music version of Future Brain by R. Tirati, M. Chirigato and H. Beaker 1985 with 2016 new lyrics by F. Lopez. Madam Satan, I did not start the fire, you did in my world, but you can never control me or my heart. That is how stupid you are. Your future will never be one with my body and soul. Madam Satan, they say love is blind, but open your eyes, you don't stand a prayer. That is how stupid you are. Madam Satan, I'm of one God the light and you are of the shadowy darkness. That is why I can never be part of you. Madam Satan, your powers are getting stronger as mine grow weaker. You can use your magic and black potions to possess my flesh and bones. But my life and soul will always be free and pure, that is how stupid you are. Silence, the burning of Phantasma has done nothing to tame your meaty tongue, she commanded over the roar of the crowd of demons. I think I'm starting to enjoy this. Saint Ramz spouted with wisdom. Drop the halo, Ramz. It's not in my plans. She showed no mercy for him, only for her own broken dream with all the vestiges fading at once. This nightmare he was in could not be more permanent than the night sky above or the royal throne she sat upon. This terrible battle was fought and won by her. She radiated heat like the sun itself. From this moment, Saint Ramz knew he was a goner. Loud thunder rolled down, and the electrical jolt of the bolt of lightning struck the base of the wooden cross. Falling back into the large pit of volcanic lava, he vanished without a trace. Hitting nirvana like a bloodless, romantic predator, Madam Satan's eyes bored deep down into the flaming pit with much satisfaction. Ramz, you will soon complete the transformation of the spell of spells. All that is missing is a crown of thorns around your horns. She waved her hands in the fanfare of the fall and the new rise of Saint Ramz. With stretched out palms, she stood unmoving as his valiant soul shimmered over a vortex of fire and the cheers that witnessed his mortal end. Suddenly, a sword fell from the sky before Madam Satan's feet. From the distance, the ritual came to an abrupt stop. Above the arena, an army of warrior angels stood around the castle's open dome stadium, thrusting their swords, as the archangel stepped out from the fray. The paramount arrival was seen as an encounter of the heavenly realm. The mega-archangel, Michael, with his magnificent chevron wings, alighted down before Madam Satan, putting a damper on her proceedings. That ended the sacrificial rites as all the demonic forces fell silent for a moment. This was followed by a terrible sound like 1,000 hissing black adders that had been set loose. In the awesome and unique phenomenon, God, in the form of a powerful white light, shot down from a star gate parting the techno-lava pit, instantly transforming it into an icy blue pool of water, the staff of life. Redemption had come from above in what was Saint Ramz's few minutes of death as he now emerged like an Olympic diver from the bottom of the pool. In his resurrection, Saint Ramz opened his eyes with an unblinking faith. In the midst of a glorious miracle, Madam Satan stood alongside Michael, the most powerful angel of antiquity. There was no denying in this turmoil that she was harboring her darkest secrets. Deliverance, she shouted over the loudness of the trumpets from the sky. Michael, I have no quarrels with you, but in this debaucher, who has made you the eyes and ears of Phantasma? Who, Madam Satan, you'll get only one explanation. Be wise. Leave now while you still have a head on your shoulders. The Archangel General waved his mighty golden handle sword over Madam Satan like the dragon lady that she was. She had brought conflict to this confrontation in this dangerous sham rule over Phantasma. Very well, Michael. I'll leave. I'm at a disadvantage, but these pilgrims have not seen the last of me. The next time, it will be a potboiler. I'm still the mistress of reinvention, and everyone better run for safety, because it will be far worse than anyone can imagine, she said with a dispassionate voice for the next chilling visit to resonate powerfully in Ramz's ears. Saint Ramz is of the Lord's kingdom. He will never be of your realm. Now take all your entire monstrously evil entities with you. You will not get the sacrificial ram of God as long as I'm around, he said with no argument. In the excess dreams and extremes in her expectation, she turned and said, Ramz, it appears you have won this round after all, but sooner than later, paths do cross. It's all a matter of time, isn't it? With much sadistic sarcasm, she said, farewell, Michael, until the next time whence we meet again. I will have Satan's army at bay, and you'd better come right behind your herald angels, trumpets, and all that jazz. There was a kind of reluctances of pleasure as she had realized all was lost for now. She witnessed above the stadium's open dome God's mighty army on horseback in chariots with swords, spears, and bows drawn, ready to engage her minions. Still more was coming down from the bowels of heaven's gates. Michael was ready to swing his silvery blade at emptiness. With sword in hand, clad in full battle gear, he was mocking and sought to kill her with the very blade he had been given to do the bidding of God, the light. The long blade was more powerful than any mortal could ever wield, and he sought to stop her nocturnal torment tonight. There would be no tears for you, Helantica, daughter of Satan, if you were slain in battle this very night. Perhaps, as you say. Hence, she saw the reflection from his blade and turned to face Saint Ramz for one last look in this unprecedented event where he took center stage, looking buff, cut, ripped, and chiseled, halo aglow, as she idolized him from near. Her mind caught in a nebulous mist, despite the nearness of her end. She showed no crazy fear in her wicked dark eyes. Clutching her throat, Michael was her enemy as she cowered before him. Easing her burden, the fiery twister appeared, which had been coined the dancing Salome by Dr. Nemo, having its own personality, given a series of tumultuous noise-making sounds, train whistles, bells, telephone rings, and intercom voices. In the hypomania like a Mardi Gras, the evil court of players in Roman costume paraded past Saint Ramz and up a flight of steps, followed by the 7 deadly sins and Tartu, the royal advisor, who also disappeared into the fiery twister. There was no contempt in her final moment with no reconciliation, prefiguring the end of her rule over Phantasma. Madame Satan looked over her shoulder. I love you, Ramz. She now ran straight into the twisting inferno. It was hard leaving her torrid obsession behind in a battle that could not be fought this night with no new beginning but a sheer icy climax. Saint Ramz boldly stood back away from the ominous ramble of the tornado like a fiery vortex's lift-off. Airborne, it traveled skyward into deep space beyond the moon and the shower of the brightest stars in the distant space. Stunned by the phenomenon, Saint Ramz, on his knees, knelt before the hand of Michael, the archangel, but in the blink of his hazel eyes, he stood and spun around. The Viking angels and castle had all vanished into the thin, misty air. High atop the black cliffs, Saint Ramz glanced down over the city that gleamed like new in the dawn as the sun's rays peeked through the horizon. By the grace of God, marking the return and a symbol of peace, flocking pigeons took flight like an aerial ballet in the distance. Had all this been a bad nightmare? Saint Ramz thought, but looking down at his feet, he found the tiny gold cross that Rita Hayworth had lost. Affirming that this was no dream, the reign of terror had come to an end. Ironically, Saint Ramz, a guardian at rest, discovered an extraordinary peace of mind about something that had given him so much pain yet reawakened feelings that were only a memory now. For now, the Ram of God embodied the Holy Spirit and the Passion of Christ in the most incredible city on the face of the planet. Holding his saintly head up high, the hand of God, in the form of a strong breeze, pushed Saint Ramz off the dangerous black cliffs into the wind below. Soaring like a bird in the sky, he jetted down, knowing he was bestowed keeper of the city of Phantasma. Saint Ramz was frolicking, and his heart raced, charged with a relentless joy, as a pious look came over his masked face. In something of an anticlimax, the wind, like a breath from heaven, carried him in a wave of devotional secular sainthood. Ha! 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 The Ram of God laughed hard and loud into the icy wind, followed by a flock of pigeons. With his halo in tow and black cape spread out like a giant stingray, he glided through the ether, ready for his next great adventure in the Ram of God trilogy. The end.